Well, the last time you were having sex, do you remember what your partner was like? Was she moaning? Was he saying, call me daddy? Or how was the response? I think that is something that makes sex an experiential thing. And that's why we want to have it more and more because it involves two people and the chemistry between them. But there are times when the chemistry is absolutely something that the person having sex doesn't really give a fuck about. And that's when rapes happen. We do wonder what is it that tells a person to do something like that? Like, what part of the brain is acting that time to make somebody do such an act in the first place that they penetrate their penis into a vagina, or maybe the other way around? And yeah, I think it's an area where all of our understanding and all our books fail to give us any meaning whatsoever. Rape is a crime which has multiple facets, one of which will be a crime against the gender, basically depending upon the sexuality, the genitalia of the person, and that's what the intention might be. Might be, again, I don't know. And one will be against that. It's just a crime against bodily crime in a way. It's just bodily harm, which with a specific purpose, similar to murder or hitting someone or slapping someone. What do you think? I ask you, Deepal, that what do you think about the act of rape, whether the same being either a sexual crime or a bodily or a crime in the category of bodily harm?
See, rape it in itself is a very broad topic. You cannot classify simply the act of a person out of one particular motivation. Sometimes there are multiple motivations involved in that. Sometimes it's purely simply the feeling of empowerment over the other person. Sometimes it is simply out of sexual frustration. Sometimes it's a combination of both. Sometimes the person is some way or the other insulted by the other person and then it becomes a revenge rape. So there is no one particular way, but one thing is for sure, that the person who is doing knows that what he is doing is not right. He is not entitled to it. The other person is not enjoying it, but the thing is he wants it from it. So the
Wants exactly what? Like sexual pleasure out of it? Like, if that's the intention, then there is absolutely no sexual pleasure out of it because
maybe for the women it is not maybe, definitely not for the women, but maybe
like
for the
not
guy.
for anybody who's being raped. I'm sure it's not a
Definitely not.
like
But maybe for the guy it is. A mind is a very, I am sure Nilanjana will agree with me, mind is a very complex thing. We still not have understood, even I would say it will be convenient to say half of it. So there is still a lot of mystery unsolved around the psychology of the rape. But the thing is, rape, not all rapes can be categorized in a one particular way, and not all victim or not all the accused can be treated the same way. One has to be sympathetic to the accused as well. If it is a mental disorder, it is arising out of mental disorder, because for other diseases, for example, assumingly AIDS, people have sympathy for the person. But when we are talking about rape, it is simply the act. It is not the intention behind it. The person, just like a mental stressed out person, a mentally disoriented person, is compelled by his disability. So you cannot treat all the accused with the same thing, but definitely it is a crime and it should not go unpunished. And for that very reason, coming back to the legal point, not all simply there is not one criteria to punish the person. There is a criteria to the minimum sentence, I believe, is 10 years for the rape and goes to death. So that
death will be only in the case of rarest of rare.
Rarest of it, fair enough. And again, this
I get it. Like, I think there are multiple facets to it, and that's why we have a panel full of three people for the multiple views that are going to come across the spectrum. We have Deepal with us. Welcome to the show. Deepal is a practicing lawyer before the Delhi High Court, and Welcome to the show, Deepal.
Thank you. It is my honor to be here.
Yeah, we have Nilanjana with us. Nilanjana from the psychology realm to tell us why is a rapist raping people and what is the victim doing about it. Is she or he getting better, or yeah, there is something that we should think that it's going to cause permanent damage later in the segments. And we have Yashwardhan Oza, a practicing lawyer based out of Delhi and Indore. Welcome to the show, Yashwardhan.
थैंक यू. जैसे मैं बीच में बोल रहा हूँ.
हाँ जी.
आपने पूछा कि क्या रेप एक सेक्सुअल क्राइम है या ह्यूमन बॉडी के. तो एज पर द एक्ट ह्यूमन बॉडी कहते हैं, मगर आपको सोचना पड़ेगा ये कहाँ से चालू हुआ है. एंटी रेप लॉज 1860 में आए हैं आईपीसी में. उससे पहले ऐसा नहीं था कि रेप नहीं थे, होते थे. मगर आप अगर पहले से सोचोगे तो पहले क्या होता था कि जागीर होती थी, ज़मींदार लोग होते थे, उनके अपने कानून होते थे, उनकी अपनी सजाएं होती थी. तब एक औरत को या एक लड़की को एक प्रॉपर्टी के जैसे देखा जाता था. तो मान लीजिए जागीरदार है, उसके नीचे आदमी काम कर रहा है, उसने कोई गलती की तो उसकी पनिशमेंट क्या थी कि उसकी वाइफ को पनिश किया जाए. तो एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम अगर आप देखोगे तो ना तो वो सेक्सुअल ऑफेंस था, ना क्राइम अगेंस्ट ह्यूमन बॉडी था. वो ये था कि किसी एक इंसान की प्रॉपर्टी, हाँ, के अगेंस्ट क्राइम था.
चोरी और रेप एक ही बराबर आता था.
हाँ, वो ये था कि आप किसी और की प्रॉपर्टी के ऊपर कोई क्राइम कर रहे हो, ऑफेंस कर रहे हो, जो ओवर द इयर्स अब चेंज होते गया.
The thing becoming that we are looking at all the multiple facets of things to surely better understand that it is a crime against property the way it has been culturally looked at. Then we look at it a crime against bodily harm because surely there is a harm that is coming to the person. She is or he is being sexually violated, जिसकी वजह से there is a minute physical harm, but the mental trauma that comes with it is obviously huge.
Definitely.
Then comes that the same being categorized as a sexual crime. Psychologically speaking, Nilanjana, what is it that a person has the tendency to act on something like that triggering in his brain, that he is absolutely becoming insensitive and ignorant, that the other person doesn't really matter in the first place?
I think there are various things to it. For example, the way that you've been raised will make a huge difference to the way that you understand boundaries and the way that you understand consent. Right? In a lot of families, consent is not explicit. It's not something that's asked or ever explained to a child. कि अच्छा हम तुम्हारी गाल खींचने वाले हैं, can we do that? Can I touch you? Is it okay to do
Good
that?
touch, bad touch. हाँ.
Right. So it's never introduced. Even when we're introducing good touch, bad touch, consent की बात कभी आती ही नहीं है टेबल पे, because हम बच्चे से पूछते नहीं. हम बस बोलते हैं ये अच्छा टच है और ये खराब है, ये लोग कर सकते हैं और ये लोग नहीं कर सकते हैं. So the first thing is just the way that you've been raised. That will play a huge role, right? So the cultural, societal way of looking at it is that. There are also research studies that suggest that it could be biological thing. You know, the entire Darwinian theory which suggests that men have, especially men, have uncontrollable sex desires which cannot be restrained or controlled, and well, it will very often come out in spaces where they know they have the power to exert control in this way. So, in fact, going back to the question that you were also asking, Deepal, was that when we look at rape, it's not just a sexual crime. It's also a bodily harm case. It's also a case of domination, because all of these things come together. For some cases, some of them will be just domination. Happens a lot in, for example, universities, in frat parties, where young men reach a certain social status only when they are sexually experienced, when they have been, sexually, having explicit flings with people. People know about it. So, us panic mein, in order to reach that alpha male status, you have to do things. In that panic, you do things. So, I feel like there are various things that come into the picture, sometimes together, sometimes separately, to bring an individual, man or woman or otherwise, to commit such a crime. But I do understand as a therapist that it's not a disorder. It's not a disorder that makes an individual. It could be. Like, for example, you could be, going through schizophrenia. A part of it could be violence. And a part of that violence could lead to rape. But it's not like committing the act of rape is a disorder in itself. It's not a mental or behavioral or psychological disorder.
So clearly there aren't a specific type of people who rape, but it's It's people out of the general,
Yes.
typical mass itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
मगर जो कर रहे हैं
वो भी हम ही
उसमें
हैं.
क्लासिफिकेशन आप कर सकते हो. वो मैं आपको एग्जांपल्स देता हूँ.
हाँ.
एक होता है जो एंगर में होता है, एक होता है जैसे बदले की भावना हो गई, या फॉर एग्जांपल मैंने किसी को प्रपोज किया, नहीं मानी, लोगों ने मेरा मजाक उड़ाया, दोस्तों ने, तो एक एंगर में होता है. एक होता है सेक्सुअल रेपिस्ट जिसे हम कहते हैं, मतलब जो लॉज में आपस में डिस्कस करते हैं, वो ऐसा होता है, उसकी सेक्सुअल फैंटेसीज होती है. दूसरा होता है सैडिस्टिक होता है, उसे मज़े आती है टॉर्चर करने में, उसे मज़े आती है बॉडली हार्म करने में. बेसिकली वो चाहता है एक विक्टिम की बॉडी पे कंट्रोल पाना, उसे डिफेम कर, डेरोग्रेट करके, दबा के, तो उसमें वो एम्पावर्ड फील करता है. तो ऐसे आप जो इनका वो सही है कहना कि रेप कोई बीमारी की वजह से नहीं है, मगर जो रेपिस्ट हैं उनकी अलग अलग सोच हो सकती है कि क्यों ऑफेंस कर रहे हैं. कुछ होते हैं अपॉर्चुनिटी बेस्ड होते हैं, जिनके दिमाग में है कि हम करेंगे, मगर वो अपॉर्चुनिटी का वेट कर सकते हैं. वो वेट 2 साल भी कर सकते हैं, 3 साल भी कर सकते हैं. फिर उनको अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ मिलती है, फॉर एग्जांपल कि कोई विटनेस नहीं है आसपास, अकेला कोई घूम रहा है, उसका फ़ायदा लेना. तो इस बेसिस पे आप अगर अलग अलग रेप अक्यूज से बात करोगे तो आपको समझ आता है कि
There's a difference.
हाँ,
So
there's a difference.
I think, can it be drawn a conclusion that as per the jurisprudence today, the law being practiced today, and the studies that we have, that there is no single cause for finding why a person committed rape? Like there is no commonality among all the cases जो एक general rule की तरह call out करा जा सकता है.
Definitely.
So the same only being an act-based crime has absolutely nothing to do with the general principles of criminal law. कि अगर चोरी देखते हैं तो मेंस रिया देखा जाता है, एक्टर्स रिया देखा जाता है, इम्पैक्ट देखा जाता है, कॉज इफेक्ट देखा जाता है, एंड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ इट द कोर्ट विल अराइव एट अ कंक्लूजन कि whether the same needs to be convicted or accused. Like, but in rape, if there's penetration, it's just like it's just there.
आप ये भी कह सकते हैं कि जैसे बाकी क्राइम्स में मोटिव होना बहुत ज़रूरी है, रेप में मोटिव इज़ नॉट नेसेसरी. वो हो सकता है कि आप मतलब अक्यूज से पूछते हैं जब क्वेश्चनिंग होती है या आप एग्जामिन करते हो, तो उससे मोटिव निकलवाना बहुत मुश्किल है फॉर रेप अक्यूज. ऐसे मर्डर हुआ है तो प्रॉपर्टी के लिए हुआ है, चोरी हुई है गरीबी के लिए हुई है. रेप आप एक पर्टिकुलर मोटिव से नहीं जोड़ सकते.
The story has to add up to, you have to basically क्योंकि कोई भी accused आके ये थोड़ी बोलेगा मेरा मन करा तो मैंने कर दिया.
Certain cases there are people are arrogant enough to claim that yes, I did it and I felt happy, I was satisfied. There are cases, not always.
But most of these interviews that I saw of accused people where they said that I did it because मेरा मन करा, it usually comes from a place of absolute ignorance. Maybe it might be poverty, like it happened with the Nirbhaya case.
Exactly.
The Nirbhaya accused clearly said कि भाई मेरा मन किया.
The main perpetrator.
हाँ, वो लड़का उसके साथ बस में चुम्मा चाटी कर रहा था, तो मेरा भी मन करा, तो मैंने उसको मार के कर दिया and मेरे को मजा आया.
Exactly.
So he was coming from a place of lack of awareness because of पैसा नहीं था उसके पास, गरीब आदमी था. दूसरा उसके पास एजुकेशन सिस्टम नहीं था, एक कुछ भी. So his life was pretty much at that point of time.
Maybe he had a very high patriarchal thinking, male chauvinist thinking, that guy can do it, why cannot I?
Yes. So okay, accordingly awareness and probably a little bit of exposure, that he had absolutely no exposure. उसने जीवन में लड़कियों को प्यार से कैसे देखते हैं या लड़कियों का क्या सिस्टम है वो समझा ही नहीं.
Right.
And I was in fact discussing that how to like deal with the problem of rape and stuff. I was coming to this point only that निर्भया के accused ने तो ये बोला था कि मेरा मन करा तो मैंने कर दिया क्योंकि वो भी कर रहा था तो मैं क्यों नहीं कर सकता. So in order to increase the exposure that men coming from slightly backward ecosystems in their own way, कोई पिछड़ा है, कोई गरीब है, किसी ने जीवन में सरकारी स्कूल में सिर्फ लड़कों के साथ ही बैठा है, श्योर ही विल नॉट हैव द सेंसिटिविटी कि मेरे को अगर एक लड़की दिख गई और हिज हार्मोन्स एक्ट अप तो मेरे को क्या करना है. मतलब
I again will differ on this point because there are two main examples. First is that boys locker room chat room. The kind of explicit text tells you other thing. All the boys were from a very good school. Secondly, in case of I think Karishma Kapoor, her husband committed kind of atrocities, perversities on her, and he had a very high background. So I think it will be wrong to link that thing to social background, economical background. It all comes from the mind.
It's
again.
from across the spectrum.
Exactly.
And certainly I do not mean to say कि भाई सिर्फ backward आदमी या सिर्फ कम exposure वाला आदमी करेगा.
But there is a possibility.
The possibility increases because
Yes.
there's a great degree of sexual repression. भाई पता ही नहीं है करना क्या है तो कबाड़ा ही
And
करेंगे.
otherwise as well, in all kind of media, we are exposed to so many things. Our expectations are rising day by day. In everything you see, there is sexualization of content.
हाँ कटरीना कैफ को माजा की ऐड बेचनी है तो रसीला
JCC Cement, best example. What's the point of that girl?
which ad are you talking about?
A girl in a bikini coming out of sea, and they are selling JCC Cement.
Oh.
Any link? None whatsoever.
And all of this contributes towards a certain level of objectification of the females. और
Basically raising our expectations and ambitions from their lives.
अब 5 साल का बच्चा ये देखेगा तो 15 साल की उम्र में उसके दिमाग में तो यही आएगा कि मेरे को यही मेरे दिमाग में एक सब लेवल कंडीशनिंग बन चुकी है कि मैं औरत को देखूंगा तो बस एक सेक्स की नज़र से देखूंगा चाहे रोटी खाने
I'll tell you an example. My nephew, he is 5 years old. My Dee took her to a dance class, and you know the kind of songs they are being taught to dance on. Genda Fool. उसमें बादशाह की लाइन आती है, ले लूं तेरी विकेट पिकेट and all. People are small children are dancing to that tunes. There are several different songs, but people want their children. My Dee raised the objection, but other people are like these. It's fine. These are common songs. People are it's fine. On normal any party, these my child will dance to these things and people will notice him, so they are okay with it. But I and my Dee personally felt no, it's not. There are other innocent songs as well.
And people who are comparatively exposed to, who are not aware ki what sort of impact does an exposure to sexualized songs or sexualized images have, will certainly be those exact people who will be subliminally conditioned by all of this without knowing ki okay their act might just amount to rape in the future because वो कर लेंगे उनको पता ही नहीं
Exactly,
चलेगा.
it's like a one small seed in the mind. How much and where in what way it will grow out to be, nobody knows. Today is just one song. Tomorrow is a video, a small music video. Tomorrow it's a movie. Later on it's a whole anything. It could be anything.
And that's a slippery slope now because now you don't know. You are probably a rapist yourself.
Exactly.
बन गए मतलब पता भी नहीं चला था.
Could be. Because let's be honest. It's one thing to say that we should control our senses, but reality is totally different. It's not easy for anyone. For example, let's take an example of smoking. I think majority of them, let's not put a number, but assume majority. Today even I was talking to one guy, he has quit smoking for 2 days. But he's saying it's very difficult. Now compared to an actual primary urge in your body, it's difficult to just go on without smoke for 2 days and you are asking somebody to control his primary urges for long, who has no control over himself. Let's be sentimental to that aspect as well. I agree that it's not a mental disorder, but at the same time we are building a culture around itself that is promoting it as well.
So the tendency to rape is a normal human urge.
No, not rape. The objectification of things.
The tendency to have sex.
We are setting up an atmosphere. Let me try to explain this with a smaller example. We want our city to be clean, but it is just the duty of the government, NDMC, or the cleaners to keep the city clean. As a human, I owe a responsibility to the society to throw the thing in the garbage. I started with the Instagram and all about 3 years back. The kind of content I started receiving was the female fashionista and all. I was indulgent to it, fine. But on the same time, I used to watch also dog videos, cat videos, everything.
Yeah.
But gradually I noticed the content that is being showed to me is primarily these fashionistas and all. So I made a conscious choice. I consciously skipped those content. I only focused on cat content, normal memes and all. And today, I can proudly say my Instagram account is free from all of them. Sometimes it is a conscious effect.
That must have taken quite a lot because
A lot of time I had to delete my Instagram account. I don't keep Instagram and Facebook on my phone. I access it only through when I open my laptop
a browser.
or through a browser. That's it. That's does me two things: saves my time and just for the light humor and all.
That
That's
is
it.
definitely a lot of effort into keeping your feed safe so that things don't expose you to the light.
See, but I cannot expect the same thing from the others as well. What is the current content revolving around? If we see the system, yesterday I was watching a content, like it is nothing related to it, that the people are into TikTokification of things. TikTok was a trend about 3 years back when it was banned in 2020. It was a very trending thing, which has been adopted by now Instagram and Facebook and YouTube as well. So what is this? Basically a 30 second encapsulating all your content in a 30 second to 1 minute video. Now the current music system, music industry is compelled to, encapsulate their main content in those 30 seconds. Because a lot of their promotion is being gained around the TikTokification or the
Of
short
everything.
list.
Because they're busy trying to sell you everything that they can in 30 seconds.
Right.
Which is again manipulating with our.
So we are the consumers. Okay. Every content around us is for us.
अब इसका मतलब ये थोड़ी कि अब रील देखना बंद कर दो यार मतलब.
No, but we have to, at least few of us can set
क्या
up.
देखना है वो डिसाइड कर सकते हैं.
Exactly. That is my point. In current situation, I think we are heading towards a very dangerous trend. And if few of us at least start taking things in our hand, controlling our content, things will, tomorrow when the AI is going to take control over things, God help us.
Well, I like to think of the simulation like that कि कल का AI क्या ही करने वाला है. In
No, but
fact,
this is interesting because there was a documentary called The Manufacturing of Consent, which is based off a book by Noam Chomsky. And what he says is that जब market वो create करे थे World War II के बाद अच्छे से properly consumerism आ रहा था, they realize that whatever they sell will become the public psyche. जो भी market decide करेगा sell करने के लिए वो societal और cultural norms बन जाएंगे. So they picked up a problem or created a problem, then sold you the solution and said this is how it is. For example, the idea that sex is a need is also something that has been sold to us कि हम sex के बिना नहीं जी सकते, right? But it's not a need. It is reproduction that is a need because that is a biological instinct with which we are born कि हमें अपना हमारी civilization को sustain करना है. So it's not the sexual part, which is based on pleasure, but the actual need is just to reproduce, right? So it's not sex. But what we've been sold in the reels and movies and songs and everything is that sex के बिना हम नहीं रह सकते. So words like sex starved, touch starved is used to suggest कि actually इंसान बिना sex करे बहुत they're like in a lot of like pain or that they've been not
Suffering.
given
something, they're deprived of something.
which is true. If you don't have sex for a long time, your body is in a state of depression. If I'm not
That's
wrong.
not true, yeah.
I mean, that's what I've read. Like, like if you put two people and compare them, like the person who's having regular sex and a person who's having absolutely no sex.
But then again, so the correlational data then will be between someone who's having sex with a partner who is in a long-term relationship versus having casual sex versus having no sex versus choosing not to have sex. Now these are all 4 different categories जिसमें content and the contentment they feel and the satisfaction, overall life satisfaction will be completely different, right? So I think these two categories are not just like कि एक sex करा एक नहीं करा. I think उसमें भी बहुत diversity है, because someone who's chosen not to have sex can also feel the same amount of satisfaction as someone who's having sex with a long-term partner. But it may not be the same as someone who's having casual flings.
Do people choose not to have sex? Like, I'm talking about not the people who are like in a state where they are mentally very disturbed, that sex is probably the last thing on their mind because
No, sure.
their entire body is like entirely stupid. But I'm talking about a fairly happy person having the right hormones in their brain, having the right perfect life whatsoever, will say no to sex because then like all the other needs are satisfied, and probably the urge to procreate, which is a very human tendency, will be happy and will be kicking in like fairly uniformly, and like sex or no sex is not something that they were really worried about.
Absolutely. And I say this from personal experience. I am a practicing celibate as of now, right? And I don't feel like the lack of sex is in any way causing me discontentment or wanting me to like go out on the streets and do something crazy. It's not. Because I feel like when you also look at, for example, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's not exactly a hierarchy. But when you're looking at something much bigger than just your biological needs, and you start looking at your, creative needs, your social needs, your self-actualization, when you start moving towards all of that, it is true that your biological needs will take a step back or will go to the, backseat of the car, because you are not driving from the biological, standpoint of I need to survive and I need to like live the everyday. Rather, you're trying to make something out of life. So
I completely agree with her. What's the point of our education if we are still driven by our biological needs only?
Well, इंसान और जानवर का फर्क यहीं पे I think kick in करेगा where
Exactly.
the act is so animal in its own nature that I think we become really ignorant of what the other person will go through, and let alone physically, mentally. I think no rapist ever has the power to empathize or comprehend कि वो कितनी गंदी वाट लगाने वाला है एक आदमी के पूरे जीवन की या उस आदमी के पूरे इकोसिस्टम की. Because even in minor cases of sexual harassment, a girl might just break down and stop doing whatever she was doing in her life. Let it be she is rising up the ladder in her profession and things like that. But a minor incident of sexual harassment just pushes a girl to close the doors and stay inside for a year or something like that. And I've heard stories like that. Even in profession, like I managed to come across. Does the
stigmatization of the victim basically?
Not stigmatization, like I think the mental impacts of sexual harassment of
along
rape
with that. Okay.
And things that have a sexual angle which like unwelcome acts which have something to do with the sexuality of a person have way more mental trauma than a simple act of slapping someone or something like that.
Definitely.
Does the victim ever recover, like in your experience with practicing with rape victims and even accused, do you see like the victim ever recovers from the trauma?
See, the trauma that has been caused to a victim, it is indescribable. And coming out of a trauma is not at all an easy task. We are talking about our society where mental illness is considered a stigma in itself. And most of the times the victim herself is left abandoned on her own. So in all this toxic environment, it is very difficult for her to come out openly about things, first of all. And secondly, if she even opens about things, it is not easy for her to recover because people in name of sympathy keep reminding you of all that trauma. They keep asking you weird type of questions.
क्योंकि बाकी लोगों के पास बात करने के लिए से वही बचता है आपसे.
It becomes so
वो आपको
sensitive.
रोज वही चीजें बात करके.
Simple thing on a lighter side to understand this, एक 30+ ईयर के आदमी के साथ अगर सोसाइटी में जाता है अपनी, तो उसके सबके साथ एक क्वेश्चन होता है कि भाई शादी कब कर रहे हो. तो इट इज काइंड ऑफ अ सिमिलर थिंग इफ पीपल गेट टू नो. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल
जब भी मिलोगे पूछें तुम ठीक हो ना, तुम ठीक हो ना,
कैसा है सब कुछ, आप ठीक हो, कैसा गुजरा, ये वो, instead of minding in the own business.
Well, just imagine the other scenario that the other person tells you that he or she has been raped, and the next time you meet him, you absolutely don't acknowledge it. Like, I think the person is going to flip out again because I think the rape
यू शुड
victim is
वेट फॉर द
always in
टाइम
the
जब वो खुद डिस्कस करना चाहे.
yeah.
मतलब आप रैंडमली जाके उसको एकदम से बोलो, हो सकता है उसका मूड ठीक हो, वो उसको ओवर करने की कोशिश कर रहा है और आप जाके बोलो भाई जो हुआ था सही था,
But since
अब
it's
ठीक
not
है
something,
तो
but since it's not something special, don't you think that like there it's not something special in a way कि rape is not special, that not a certain class of people do it, or there isn't a specific mapping of your brain that can detect कि अच्छा ये बंदा rape करने वाला है, or things like that. So it has to be normalized that it becomes a part of the general crime pool कि अच्छा murder होता है, rape होता है, चोरी होती है, चकारी होती है, and this is it becomes a part of the pool. When you do that and a person tells you that he or she has been raped, and the next time you meet him, और भाई क्या चल रहा है, बात ही मत करो उस बारे में.
नहीं, मतलब आप
Then again it's gonna press another button कि बहन जो तेरे को अकल नहीं है, तूने पूछा ही नहीं है मेरे से, like you.
नहीं, इस पे मेरा थोड़ा अलग व्यू है. सबसे पहली बात कि ठीक है, एक्ट में विक्टिम वर्ड है, कोर्ट में आप विक्टिम वर्ड बोलते हो, आप उनको एज ए विक्टिम मत ट्रीट करो, एज ए सर्वाइवर ट्रीट करो, तो उनको अपने आप थोड़ा एनर्जी और कॉन्फिडेंस आता है. ऐसा मेरा ओपिनियन है, आप बेटर बता पाएंगे इसमें. मगर आप कोई आपसे शेयर कर रहा है तो आपको उसको ये बताने की ज़रूरत नहीं कि तेरे साथ बहुत गलत हो गया है. गलत जिसने किया है उसे बताओ आप. नॉर्मली होता क्या है, आज घर में भी नॉर्मली आप देखोगे तो सबसे ज़्यादा ऐसे क्राइम्स घर के अंदर ही हो जाते हैं. और बचपन से आप अपने फादर को जाके बोलते हो चाचा ने मुझे ऐसे छुआ,
That is true.
तो वो समझा के बोलते नहीं बेटा वो प्यार कर रहे थे, भूल जाओ. तो जब आपको मालूम है कि आप जब बोलोगे और आपका मुंह बंद कर दिया जाएगा, तो वैसे ही वो बहुत टूटा हुआ रहता है आदमी.
Well, majority of the rapes do happen by a relative than a stranger in the first place. That's what the data from NCRB also says. And it definitely points towards a fact कि ऐसा क्या खास हो रहा है कि अपने ये कर रहे हैं, जबकि the society at large is mindful of not doing it to a stranger. Like if you do a comparison of the accused people, they are more happy doing it to somebody they know than somebody whom you don't know.
बिकॉज एक रीज़न है उसे. अब हम 4 लोग बैठे हैं, हम 2 घंटे बात कर रहे हैं. यहाँ से जब आप घर जाओगे आप सोचोगे कि जो मेरे साथ बैठा था क्या कर सकता है, कैसा रिएक्ट कर सकता है. जब आप किसी को जानते हो तो आपको आइडिया रहता है कि वो शी वोंट रिवोल्ट, शी वोंट फाइट बैक, आई विल टेक कंप्लीट कंट्रोल ओवर हर. तो उन एज अक्यूज वो ईजियर हो जाता है. प्लस उन्हें ऐसी जगह ले जाना जहाँ विटनेस ना हो, जहाँ वो ज़्यादा हॉस्टाइल हो. एक अक्यूज़ के आप दिमाग से सोचोगे तो इट इज़ ईजियर कि आप किसी जान पहचान वाले को कहीं ले जाओ घुमाने, वहाँ कुछ क्राइम कर लो. कि रैंडम किसी को पकड़ना थोड़ा टफ है.
जो रिलेटिव वाला एंगल है, इट इज प्रीडोमिनेंटली इन द केस ऑफ चिल्ड्रन ओनली. Relatives predominantly,
I mean, that depends honestly, to be fair, that how much voice are you giving to, like, I'll be blunt about it. आज के इंडिया में if you give a voice of absolute power, undeterred voice to a woman, marriages are gonna bust open because rapes happen on a daily basis in marriages. Like, I'm talking about not uneducated, poor, or anybody coming from a family. I'm talking about everybody. Our parents also, if you ask them about each and every time they've had sex, the mothers will come forward and say that yes, there was a time I had sex because at a time when I didn't want to. And if you look at it from an angle purely on merits, it's rape because consent wasn't there. So I just bring it back to the fact that surely
but that is just the case of marital rape.
Yes.
Just limited to it.
Yes.
Otherwise, in the case of a person raping is the known person. That is predominantly the case of a child, because there's 2 reasons. Otherwise, the person is raping a child. In most of the cases, the accused is the first time offender. He has never ever committed rape on other persons because he. Let's understand this thing. If he's doing it the first time, that means he did not have the guts to try it on the mature lady. Secondly, he had free access to the child as well. It's not that he specially went on that day. Third thing, child is a easy target. You can easily scare him off. You can cover his mouth. You are more physically, you can physically dominate the child very easily. Okay, so marital rape is a different thing. And known thing, the person is known to it is predominantly of the child, and the special law is there, but besides that still the offense is happening. So deterrence is something that I think is missing out.
Yes, deterrence is something that's missing out. And plus, I think if you're accused for a rape once, life does become bad for you because तिहाड़ में भी अगर तुम जाओगे रेप के अकाउंट में तो ऐसा मार कुटाई होती है.
एकदम सच बात है.
हाँ, लाइक मर्डरर हो तो इज्जत मिलेगी और यू विल मोस्ट लाइकली बिकम पैली विद द big guns inside.
Poxo accused are victims in the jail.
Yes.
And sometimes sexual victims as well.
Yes. In fact, one of my clients was in Tihar at the time जब निर्भया का accuse गया था. Santosh, I think it was his name. And there were two more guys. Ram
सुसाइड किया था जिसने.
तो वो जो सुसाइड वाला था राम का, it was said कि उसने सुसाइड नहीं किया था एक्चुअली. उसको मार दिया था अंदर ही. And
मगर जेल अथॉरिटीज को बचाना है. और
तिहाड़ की बातें इतने आराम से बाहर आती नहीं है. और अगर कोई करता है तो बहुत छुप के देख के चेक करके करेगा. अदरवाइज या तो वो अच्छा जवाब ही देगा, हाँ खाना ठीक मिलता है, सब सही है, बहुत अच्छे से रखते हैं. बिकॉज आई थिंक
रिसेंटली भी अंकित गुर्जर का जो हुआ था फर्स्ट, वो तिहाड़ में हुआ. बस उसमें ये था कि जो बाकी साथ में इनमेट्स थे उन्होंने हिम्मत की तो बाहर आ गया. वरना अंदर वो भी सुसाइड हो जाता.
Well, Tihar, I think, is another podcast altogether because the number of things over there is just insane. You will have the
Let
most.
me tell you, being a jail visiting counsel, I don't want to be part of that.
Well, that depends how much money can you spend, because if you're like P. Chidambaram or Sasikala or something like that, then you have all the amenities over there. AC room में मिलेगा.
सारे ऐसे inmates
Subrata Roy
7
was
नंबर
operating
जेल
his
में.
office from there.
हाँ, Subrata Roy
Practically running his empire from there.
एक तो उड़ती कहानी आई थी दैट ए राजा भी जब जेल में था तो वो रोज रात को जाता था अपना काम से बाहर एंड फिर वापस आता था. लाइक दैट्स व्हाट
I won't be surprised.
हाँ, even I wasn't surprised. Like, okay, this sounds like it's a very big operation to pull, but nonetheless very much possible.
ये सब 7 नंबर जेल में होता है. पता नहीं क्यों ये सब 7 नंबर जेल में ही होता है.
7 number is, I think, high profile case.
हाई प्रोफाइल. हाँ
हाँ, वो सारे तो उधर ही जाते हैं. करप्शन वो तो उधर ही मेरे को.
There is a very, what can I say, very complicated net of things that are working within the jail itself. You know, I go in the jail and there is a whole different world you can imagine. Parallel world running inside it. So there is a whole scam that goes, if the people come to know that this person is coming from a rich background, the group send their own men inside the same jail, and they have the arrangement with the jailers. They are kept in the same barracks, and at the night they approach him when everybody is asleep. They threaten them with knives and all. They have everything, access to it, that by tomorrow morning, if my account is not remitted with this much of money, forget your family.
Yeah, this I've heard. Tihar ka, like I said, Tihar should be another podcast because Tihar stories are interesting.
Right.
And
Fair
they
enough.
go on and on and on. Kabhi koi bata.
But I just wanted to use the metaphor of the jail for our psyche with regards to rape, because usually a thought process hota hai that only some people are capable of rape. That is the idea, that only some men can do it, only some women can do it, or whatever. But I feel like a lot of crimes, not just rape, also happen because we choose to suppress our ability to destroy things. We say कि नहीं, हमारा जो दिमाग है उसके अंदर बहुत सारी चीज़ें अंदर रखी हुई है, but we choose to we forget it. It's like Tihar is forgotten. Some people know it because you're part of the legal system, but most people forget it. So we forget that evil exists, within the lives that we live. And I think it's the same thing with the motives for rape. A lot of times for a lot of young men, for example, the idea is that मैं कर ही नहीं सकता. So if you ask them in an interview, आपने किसी का rape किया? नहीं, मैंने नहीं किया. Did you think it was forced sex? Maybe. So the terminology you use also changes the way
Sex
that
without willingness, absolutely.
respond to it. But just the fact that they think I'm not capable of committing such a crime, to them is like, हाँ मैंने नहीं किया, मैं नहीं कर सकता ऐसी चीज़ें.
Would you say it's absolutely necessary for all of us individually to accept the fact that there's a rapist within all of us?
Not just rapists, we are capable of all kinds of evil. What changes a normal individual into a criminal. It's a matter of a fraction of a second when they might pick up a knife and kill someone, right?
That depends, because I was studying neurology, the way the brain acts and the way you think, and there's a prefrontal cortex which is only for the purpose of logical reasoning and telling your body exactly what to do, but it doesn't guide you in terms of a moral compass, and that is something that is partly in some way regulated by the amygdala or whatever it is
so
called.
the issue with the brain is that only itna sa portion is responsible for cognitive functions, which is the prefrontal cortex. The rest of it, which is the limbic system, is responsible for your physiology and emotions, which means aapka puri bodily function, including the regular stuff and anything that you commit outside of it, is all based on a part of the animalistic brain which is not in any way connected to the prefrontal cortex at all. तो मैंने अपनी एजुकेशन, अपना मॉरल कंपस, अपने एथिक्स वैल्यूज कहीं यूज ही नहीं करे when I suddenly switch over to becoming a criminal and commit a criminal offense.
So, because no person in their right mind would choose to rape, it can be reduced that these are exactly the people who are sort of lacking in intelligence. The right way.
I wouldn't say intelligence. I'd say the lack of perhaps, I mean, we all have sentience, but you'd say maybe a higher level of sentience, the ability to be aware of your own thoughts and needs and instincts.
But at the same point of time, when I come to reduce the same analogy and apply it to a comparison table, jahan pe I see people are interested in raping people they know more than the people they are not raping. So I am sort of looking at a scenario where the brain is making a very calculated move on the basis of the person they know to rape. In which case rape becomes a very calculated move on behalf of the brain. Because now you know कि अच्छा वो लड़की या वो लड़का आवाज़ नहीं उठाएगा या इसको चुप करा दिया जाएगा या मैं इसको मार सकता हूँ, मेरे पास consequences नहीं होंगे. Like you were saying that there's a lack of deterrence, and only then your brain is functioning in a way that if there is okay, I don't think that it's going to have any consequences, you know what, I'm going to rape. So when that is happening, your brain is choosing to make all the calculations in there and then arrive at a conclusion. But at the same point of time, the animalistic part of the brain, which is not developed so far as human beings, because it's been a short while since we arrived at organizing our civilization, we are blaming that part of the brain for doing all of this.
Because I don't think the motive is coming from the prefrontal cortex. So I think in most cases, when someone is calculating if they're going to rape this person, when they're going to do it, it's coming from the motivation ki I will get caught if I do not do it properly. So the motivation is the fear of getting caught, as well as the sexual desires that you may have, wherein that part of the brain is then using the prefrontal cortex to calculate an event. But it's not using any of the other functions of the prefrontal cortex. It's just using a very small part which is saying, hum calculate kar rahe in order to not get caught.
Interestingly, you said fear. So fear is something that regulates the fear is something that gets heightened because of testosterone. And that's why men who have more testosterone than women are, and I'm not saying that people with more testosterone are going to have the tendency to rape more, but I think testosterone in a way heightens if you have the tendency to act on an inhibition of wanting to rape the other person. And the other one being oxytocin, something that again, the lesser it is, the more likely you're to go ahead with that inhibition, because there is a certain amount of non-cooperation in your mind, which is acting up, and therefore you become more ignorant of what the other person might be feeling. And both these two things are like again in your amygdala, which I was reading that is something that hasn't really developed much in the past 100 years. And therefore, the emotional complications, the mental complications of judging an act as right or wrong is something that we as humans are still in the transition phase of.
I think you're certainly right with regards to testosterone or estrogen and oxytocin. The only issue with that is, one, we obviously cannot generalize it to the entire population, that's for sure. The second thing is that most of the hormones come out from different glands of the body. So testosterone, all of the sex hormones are coming in from my sexual glands, right? So my amygdala is only then responsible for how I respond to these levels, right? My amygdala mostly is responsible for fear, most importantly, other emotions as well. But then I'm only responding to the levels of it. It's not so much the brain that is picking up signals कि हाँ इतना testosterone है तो हम ऐसे करेंगे, या it's releasing that amount of hormones. They're also two different segments, but they're also kind of responding to each other. But again, हम ऐसी generalize नहीं कर सकते कि अगर आपका testosterone high है तो आप ऐसे करोगे, या अगर आपने oxytocin नहीं experience किया as a child तो आपका level of sympathy या
In fact,
empathy कम
oxytocin is one of the things that rapists use on the victim in order to make them more cooperative during sex.
Yeah, those are one of the rape myths that a lot of rapists will have. For example, oh, but no is yes, right? Or someone who's being coy is actually just trying to get me to persuade them to say yes. Or is trying to get me to be like, अरे women in general are hard to get, तो ये करना ही पड़ता है. या ये तो हमेशा से चलता है.
Which is
ये
a
करना
myth,
ही.
like you pointed out,
It's a
because
rape
oxytocin doesn't really give you the consent, but in a way,
It
just
convinces you that this is the right thing to do because I'm feeling this way. अरे attraction तो है ना. This woman looked at me, I looked at her. There must be some attraction.
yeah. So there was this interesting case in US where this guy was basically spraying oxytocin on women and thinking that this is going to make them have sex with him. But he wasn't smart enough to actually go deeper with that. It only makes people who are familiar to you, like it only makes you comfortable with those people and not like the world at large. कि अच्छा spray करा, आओ भाई sex करते हैं. Like it wasn't that happening.
Oxytocin में हो गया, Axe की bottle.
It's being sold on Amazon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's being sold on Amazon like oxytocin sprays, and there's like make your lover happy. Spray
आज
oxytocin.
search करेंगे.
I know that gives very funny ideas in the brain, and the evil part of our brain, clearly the less evolved one,
It
has
definitely, one thing is for sure, oxytocin definitely takes better of your logic.
I think
so,
it,
to a certain extent, probably.
we've discussed about the accused, what does it serve to him, and we expressed that all of us had different ideas about the fact, but at the end we arrived at a conclusion that there is no one cardinal rule that you can apply. Then we talked about the victim and what happens. We discussed that on the psyche of the victim, but what is happening with victims, and I was also having this conversation with somebody yesterday, and we were discussing about the fact that women also go into a shell after getting raped, or anybody for that matter goes into a shell. They don't want to discuss it. I think that's a bad idea, because not only you are putting yourself at a pedestal where that's a self-harm zone, because the more you shut yourself in, the more you are putting yourself in a chamber where you cannot get help in any manner whatsoever. And at the same point of time, as a person who's related to the world, it in some fucked up way, it is on you to ensure that the other person doesn't suffer similar repercussions of a person with rapist tendencies.
Right.
I think the only point here that I have to say is that a lot of times many women don't know they've been raped. You know, it could be both not knowing the logistics of it, like keep definition hi nahi pata, but also the fact that very often in order to survive, we will tell ourselves stories. Trauma is basically a physiological experience, not so much a mind-based experience, but a physiological, emotional experience, which means that my nervous system has not been able to handle the amount of external stimuli and has now become traumatized, which is the essential definition of trauma, right? But for a lot of women, telling yourself the story that nahi mere saath aisi koi cheez nahi hui thi is a way to also survive. If I create an issue in my own mind, I will have to deal with it.
That period of survival where your body is still adjusting to the overload of external stimuli, like you said, might range from an hour or even microseconds to years
Much
at
longer,
large. Years
yeah.
at large.
Years
Like
at
it might be your entire life also for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
See,
That is barely living. That I don't think is any form of human life, like in any manner, because you're just
मैरिटल रेप में तो अधिकतर यही होता है.
But I think I think example ये बहुत अच्छा है, because when you look at a wife who's been raped for a very long time, right? एक point आता है where if you ask her आपके साथ rape हुआ है, नहीं मेरे साथ कभी rape नहीं हुआ. She's not dissatisfied in life, because एक कभी आपको बताया नहीं गया कि ऐसी चीज़ें नहीं होनी चाहिए, ऐसी चीज़ें होनी चाहिए, तो आपके पास कोई कॉन्सेप्ट ही नहीं है कि आपका हस्बैंड आपको फोर्स नहीं कर सकता. You're just like, this is what you're supposed to do. Second thing, when you've just been doing it for so long, but you tell yourself that this is normal, you get to survive. So I wouldn't say that that person who's told themselves this story is just barely survival. I think they're surviving also very well because they have this mask, which is very, मतलब they've convinced themselves कि नहीं यही story है और यही सच है. So they survive that well.
और वो उस बारे में सोचना ही नहीं चाहते.
Yeah, there's no thought process.
उन्हें ऐसा लगता है ठीक है जो हुआ मगर वो उतना गलत नहीं था.
But then
आगे बढ़ सकते हैं.
But then ये बाकी आने वाले लोगों, आने वाली पीढ़ियों के लिए, generations के लिए, it's setting them up for failure because you are accepting something that's really something that for which I think a person can say कि capital punishment भी justify कर दी जाए. On the other hand, we are advocating the fact that keeping quiet is a way forward because
मैं आपको
No, I wouldn't say that. Sorry, I'm so sorry. To go forward, we should be telling people कि आपको नहीं बोलना चाहिए in order to survive. Absolutely not. But a huge issue that comes up in a lot of, for example, therapy is people don't know that such things have happened to them. 4 साल निकल गए, 6 साल निकल गए and they had no idea कि वो रेप था. They thought कि बॉयफ्रेंड के साथ किया था, थोड़ा सा उसने जोर जबरदस्ती कर ली, ठीक है होता है ये सब चीज़ें, this is in love or this is whatever. They have no idea that this act is referred to as rape. That is like rape होता है, मतलब निर्भया स्टाइल, मतलब that's, it's not something that happens to me. You know, again, we're so distant from evil. We're like, ये ठीक है, it's okay.
we're not really distant from evil. मतलब the
Most
most
people like
used
to believe that.
गाली in Hindi language is मैं तेरी बहन चोद दूंगा, which actually amounts to कि I'll rape your sister. It's not like the sister is giving consent, so it is rape.
Yeah.
And that is the most used गाली, मतलब for any smallest thing. Let it be as
But
small
how
as...
many people are aware of what they're saying when they're throwing that gali at you? The awareness behind words and phrases is also
क्योंकि इतना नॉर्मल हो गया है कि आदमी सोचता ही नहीं है
We
कि
have
मतलब
chosen to
बोलने से
ignore.
पहले.
so.
I'll rather say we have chosen to ignore it.
I mean, true. But like, for example, I met with this girl who was in college, right? First year of college. She was raped when she was, I think, 15 or 16 by a man who was 30 years old, right? So, बहुत difference है, right? And this guy was in the army, young jawan, obviously, whatever. But this lady did not know that she'd been raped. So she's telling me the story and she's like, हाँ ऐसे ऐसे हुआ था. But पता नहीं, मतलब assault होगा या harassment.
Because even in the victim side, I believe the act of being raped is getting into a special status कि अच्छा मेरे साथ हुआ है तो शायद मेरे साथ ही हुआ है. But from my interaction again from victims, they told me their accounts of sharing it with their
मैं
friends.
आपको एक चीज़ बताता हूँ. आप सबसे ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट मेरे हिसाब से अपब्रिंगिंग पे होता है. कैसे होता है? बचपन में आप हैं, आपकी एक बहन है, एक भाई है, ठीक है. अब मैं उन घरों की बात कर रहा हूँ जहाँ पे लड़कियों का ओपिनियन मैटर कर रहा है. वहाँ की बातें नहीं कर रहा हूँ जहाँ पूछा ही नहीं जाता. उन घरों में भी जब वो लड़की बड़ी हो जाती है और दोनों की शादी हो जाती है, लड़का अगर नहीं रहना चाहता अपनी वाइफ के साथ, वो हिम्मत के बोल देता है कि मुझे नहीं रहना, तो निकल यहाँ से. क्या लड़की बोल सकती है? वो बोलना चाहे भी तो डरती है. मैं तो एक सेपरेशन की बात कर रहा हूँ. और जब आप ऐसे रेप, एक बहुत बड़ा क्राइम, जब उसकी बात आती है तो वो सबसे पहले तो हम अपने घर वालों से डर जाते हैं कि उन्हें कैसे बताएं. पुलिस स्टेशन जाना तो अपनी बात है.
That's pretty much what
ठीक है, आप पुलिस स्टेशन जाना बहुत दूर की बात है. आप अपने भाई को नहीं बता पाते, अपने फादर को नहीं बता पाते. तो पहले वो चीज़ ख़त्म होनी चाहिए कि आप डिस्कस तो करो. कितनी बार होता है, आज हम देखेंगे तो कॉलेज में हमारे ऐसे फ्रेंड्स होंगे जो हमारे सामने ऐसी बहुत चीज़ें गलत हुई होगी, पार्टीज में हो जाता है, बोल देते अरे उसने थोड़ा ज़्यादा पी लिया था, हो गया. मगर वो क्राइम है. आप आज सोच रहे हो उसको बैठ के, उस टाइम किसी ने नहीं बोला आप उस पार्टी में थे. हुआ है ऐसा, आपके साथ भी होगा, मेरे साथ भी हुआ है. मगर बात वो कि आदमी रिपोर्ट कैसे करेगा. वो जब तक आप उसको बचपन से ये नहीं सिखाओगे कि आप में उतनी हिम्मत होनी चाहिए और आपके आसपास और कोई नहीं जो आपकी सपोर्ट करेगा, ना फादर करेगा ना मदर करेगा. जब आपको ये समझ आएगा कि आपको अपनी लड़ाई खुद लड़नी है, तब आप जाओगे रिपोर्ट करने.
But in order to let's say like we were discussing कि deterrent नहीं है, तो certainly capital punishment या 10 साल जेल is on paper is not serving as a deterrent for a rapist, right?
सजा होना अलग बात है. एक होता है रिपोर्ट होना, उसके बाद ट्रायल चलेगा, हो सकता है छूट जाए.
हाँ.
मगर वो छूटेगा उसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि रेप नहीं हुआ है. वो एविडेंस नहीं था, बहुत सारी चीजें होती हैं.
So either,
मगर आप रिपोर्ट तो करो, मुझे मालूम होना चाहिए, you will fight back.
But that is a law in general, and I think the more stricter a law or the more tedious the process becomes for an accused. Like for example, POCSO case. POCSO case की penalty भी बहुत ज़्यादा strict है, and at the same point of time FIR होते ही it becomes a tedious process for the accused person. पहले अंदर जाना पक्का 100% confirm है, bail ना मिलना confirm है. So POCSO cases में if you're acting on something तुम्हारी फट जाएगी. मतलब जितना मेरे को लगता है कि अगर ये बात किसी को पता चली तो मेरी मार लेंगे. And I think that in some way serves a good example for an accused कि उसकी फट जाती है,
इसलिए लोग रिपोर्ट कर रहे हैं.
नहीं, इसलिए लोग रिपोर्ट तो अभी पॉक्सो केसेस में भी कम ही है. आई एग्री.
लेट मी बी ऑनेस्ट, पॉक्सो में बहुत मैटर्स हैं अभी भी. इनफैक्ट मोस्टली उसमें या तो द चाइल्ड बोथ ऑफ द पर्सन्स आर इनटू रिलेशनशिप, या द फैमिली in order to punish the other person, the family of the accused is filing false cases because it is very open secret.
there are two sides. आप डिफेंस साइड से सोचोगे तो
बहुत
मेरे
ज़्यादा
हिसाब से 15 to 20% केसेस ऐसे आते हैं जिसमें फैमिली प्रेशर या बदले की भावना से केसेस बनाए जाते हैं.
It's the number one strategy for lawyers, as I say on every podcast. 138 वगैरह फिर भी ड्रामा चलेगा, प्रॉपर्टी का मैटर ड्रामा चलेगा, एक पॉक्सो FIR,
मैं आपको एक
जो चाहिए सेटलमेंट मिलेगा.
केस बताता हूँ. एक केस अभी है, प्रोसिक्यूशन एविडेंस पे लगा है. तो एक कपल था, दे वर टुगेदर फॉर 2 years. जब लड़की ने शादी की बात बोली, लड़के ने मना कर दिया. रेप का केस बना, फॉल्स प्रिटेक्स्ट ऑफ मैरिज वाला. लड़के ने शादी कर ली. उसका चीफ का जब टाइम आया, एग्जामिनेशन चीफ का, लड़की जाके वहाँ बोलती है कि मुझे मेरे फैमिली वालों ने प्रेशर किया था, हॉस्टाइल हो गई वो. अब उसके बाद वो साथ नहीं रह पाए, डिवोर्स हो गया, मेहर का अमाउंट ले चुकी है, सब हो गया. फिर एक और FIR करती है रेप की अपने हस्बैंड पे. अब मजे की बात यह है, जो चीफ हुआ था रिकॉर्ड, उसके पहले की डेट दिखा रही है इंसिडेंट की. तो क्या उसके पास उस दिन मौका नहीं था उसको रिपोर्ट करने का कोर्ट में? तो मिसयूज भी है इस लॉ का. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप सिर्फ एक ही प्रोसिक्यूशन वे से देखेंगे, क्योंकि आप जब डिफेंस साइड में रहोगे तो आपको पता पड़ेगा कि आधे से ज़्यादा 20% केसेस तो
इन माई एक्सपीरियंसेस आधे से बहुत ज़्यादा.
हाँ, ये भी है.
बिकॉज आई हैव सीन,
और जो असली भी रहते हैं ना, उसको स्ट्रॉन्ग बनाने के चक्कर में प्रोसिक्यूशन इतनी गलती करती है कि डिफेंस काउंसिल उसका यूज करके
हो जाता है. एंड दैट्स व्हाई लॉ आल्सो हैज अ वेरी स्ट्रिक्ट व्यू ऑन क्वॉशिंग अ रेप केस और डीलिंग विद द trial procedure in general. I mean, I've had victims walk up to me in office and crying and expressing their ordeal, and I'm sold कि भाई इसके साथ तो बहुत गलत हो गया, and like I'll fight a case for 3, 4, 5 years, and 5 साल बाद I'll see settle हो रहा है, and then I'm asking कि ये मतलब how and why is all of this happening, and the answer is not कि अच्छा हम थक गए थे उससे. like वो मेरे को confusion था शादी के टाइम पे कि शादी से पहले ऐसे क्या हो गया. तो and it becomes problematic for me to think because भाई 3-4 साल I have acted only because of the thing that I was feeling कि ये इतना बुरा हुआ है. तो
आप ज़्यादा मेहनत कर रहे थे,
डेट नहीं लेनी है और ट्रायल पूरा करना है, हर हाई कोर्ट की हियरिंग्स छोड़ के, पैसा छोड़ के तुमने ट्रायल कोर्ट की कम पैसे वाली हियरिंग्स अटेंड करी हैं, ओनली टू फाइनली अराइव एट अ पॉइंट दैट द विक्टिम इज नाउ सेकंड गेसिंग द फैक्ट कि उसकी कंसेंट नहीं थी या नहीं थी, उसको कंफ्यूजन है. तो उसने कहा चलो कोई नहीं यार, अब सेटल कर लेते हैं.
That reminds me one interesting question. There are cases where a rape case has been filed, but there are WhatsApp chat to the contrary, like millions of sexually explicit chats from the girl as well. There would be one instance, assumingly, where there was no consent, but rest of the time she's fine. So can a guy be be convicted and tried for an offense in such a situation where the partner is active as well? Can we call him a rape? No, it's legally terms, yes. Answer is straightforward, yes. But otherwise, if we are seeing it as a society, what ordeal a person as a victim has to, as an accused has to go through, that is a different thing altogether.
I think this is again treading down that controversial line that the moment anybody makes a controversial claim कि if it's a relationship, it cannot be looked through the lens of rape because the dynamic is different. And then comes the marital rape. भाई फिर like अगर ऐसा सीन है तो marriage में फिर rape को rape नहीं देखना पड़ेगा.
My simpliciter point is, on as a society, I am not denying that there is rape, genuine rape cases happening, but at the same time there are also cases where it is being used as a sword rather than a shield.
I think there are two things here.
We have to balance things out basically.
I think you're right, but here are two problems. The first thing is consent is a verb, which means that आप हर एक process में consent लेना आपको ज़रूरी है. It's not just that if you allow me to go to base number 2 or base 3, then that means that you also want to have sex with me. That's not necessary, right? You may at some point feel कि मुझे नहीं करना है, which means every single time, even as a long-term couple, I need to be sure that you want to be in this process. Even once is a violation of a person's boundaries, that's for sure. And I'm talking just in an individual extent.
Okay.
दूसरी चीज़ ये है, say they have been in a long-term relationship and this person is convicted legally, जो भी procedure हुआ है. The problem is society will judge that individual as a rapist, which is could be a sad thing, could be a good thing, whatever. But that
Depending
individual will live with that label for the rest of their lives,
Right.
because society judges you on the basis of your highest crime. They don't care आपने क्या अच्छा किया. They only look at the evil that you have committed.
Fair enough.
So society should, but society does not care
Right, fair
of the WhatsApp chat or the relationship.
but
सोसाइटी का तो मॉब जस्टिस का सीन है ना. कल को बोलो
हाँ.
तू रेपिस्ट है, चल भाई
तुम पे बैठ
10 बंदा पत्थर मारने
हुआ
आ
ना
जाएगा,
वहाँ
बात
पे अभी,
खत्म.
That
बैंगलोर
reminds
में
me-
कहीं हुआ है
हाँ,
शायद ना?
that reminds me, I was reading an article yesterday. There is actually a plan where the government is preparing a database of the photographs, the address, and the rape, the offense,
Of-
especially sexual offenses,
पॉक्सो का तो है ही ऑलरेडी. दे मेंटेन अ रजिस्टर
and they are going to make it public. Yes,
of sexual offenders.
yes.
Well,
This
they are-
database is going to be public, and if that happens in a country like where we mob lynching is as common as throwing a stone away.
कोई
नहीं,
यार
मगर जो ये बनेगा एक्वेटेड का मिलेगा, मतलब सिर्फ अक्यूज होने से छप जाओगे आप.
Accused as a tag.
मतलब आपको ट्रायल के बाद
That detail was not much of a detail, but the thought of it having a such database, it is actually a scary thing.
well I think for normal crimes it's a definite thing, but पॉक्सो में तो we made that argument.
See, people in India, जहाँ पे आपकी गाड़ी स्क्रैच हो जाती है, वहाँ पे आप मारा मारी पे उतर आते हो सड़कों पे. तो जस्ट इमेजिन जो कि पीपल आपको जज विद अ क्लिक ऑफ ए फिंगर दे जज यू, आप पे रेप है, अरे ये तो रेपिस्ट है.
that exact
Why should we go far away? हमारे जजेस वगैरह
But that serves as the deterrent, you see. Like in a perfect system, being outed as a rapist is the perfect system because the stigma itself kills you. तुम्हें फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता 10 साल जेल है क्या है, जीवन में कोई लड़की नहीं तुम्हें हाथ लगाएगी, देखेगी नहीं. Because if you've done something so stupid, live your life in a basement all cooked up, या जाओ किसी पहाड़ पे अकेले मरे रहो because कोई तो तुम्हें देखने वाला नहीं है. Which is again I think a much better punishment than 10 साल तिहाड़ में जाके.
But I asked myself, what if the case was false and the person is
हाँ,
convicted? Then
वही मैं पूछ रहा था. मतलब से FIR हुई और आपके लिस्ट में नाम छप गया तो
that is the problem.
Convict होने पे
हाँ, या तो
That is the problem. The thing is कि the system entirely, it's not working efficiently. It is not working for the purpose actually it is working. It is for. I believe personally, अगर bail की consideration solely and strictly rely होने लगे, we only need तिहाड़ जेल, वो भी half filled होगी.
सभी बाहर निकल जाएंगे.
सभी बाहर निकल जाएंगे because all crimes are not that serious कि आपको सालों सालों आपको जेल में spend करना पड़े.
23 साल से लोग अंदर हैं.
People in experience,
इतना मैक्सिमम.
वो बाहर आना भी नहीं चाहते, कहाँ जाएंगे हम?
वो that is a different thing. But there are instances, मतलब as a हम स्टार्टिंग में जब केसेस पढ़ते थे, आई वॉज फ्रेश इन टू द प्रोफेशन. लाइक यू सेड, यू वर टेलिंग एन एग्जाम्पल कि FIR पढ़ी, ओहो इसके साथ तो बहुत बुरा हुआ, बेचारी गलत हुआ. टुडे व्हेन वी सी व्हेन वी रीड द FIR, वी ट्राई टू थिंक एंड एनालाइज करें सिचुएशन, तो वी ट्राई टू समवट फिगर आउट कि स्टोरी सही है कि फेक है.
काफी हद तक आइडिया लग जाता है.
एंड दैट इज वेयर द एक्सपीरियंस कम्स इन. The biggest problem of our system is, first of all, I think कि एक तो
गरीबी.
ना जुडिशियल सिस्टम टॉकिंग, वो तो चलो सोसाइटी का चीज़ है. जुडिशियल सिस्टम में एक तो फ्रेश रिक्रूटमेंट्स हैं, आई एम वेरी अगेंस्ट इट. रीजन बीइंग, आप किसी भी एक MBA आप
बट MM तो ये सब देखता भी नहीं है ना.
MM का नहीं आता, बट दोज पीपल ग्रो इनटू अ पर्टिकुलर फ्रेम ऑफ माइंडसेट.
नहीं, मगर पुलिस कस्टडी तो MM ही दे रहा है.
पुलिस कस्टडी
तो वो भी बहुत ज़रूरी है
हाँ राइट, फेयर इनफ.
क्योंकि आप 2 दिन जो छोड़ रहे हो उनके साथ, वो आपके साथ कुछ भी करते हो. आप देखो ना, हर चार्जशीट में डिस्क्लोजर होता ही है. हर आदमी मान जाता है कि मैंने किया है,
हाँ,
ऑल दो एडमिसिबल नहीं है, मगर करा लेते हैं ना.
होता स्टैंडर्ड प्रोसीजर है. आज शायद ही कोई केस स्पेशल स्टेटस में मिलेंगे जो आर्यन खान आए होंगे जहाँ पे
हाँ.
द डिस्क्लोजर शीट्स विल बी मेड लाइक दिस.
आई ऑलवेज जोक अबाउट इट. आर्यन खान होने के बाद भी उसने 3 हफ्ते तो गुजार ही लिए.
हाँ.
पॉइंट तो तब होता अगर उसे एक दिन भी नहीं गुजारना पड़ता.
So the question is, there are 2 types of justices that we're talking about. One is the justice which
Towards the
will be
victim and towards the accused. Let's
towards
classify
the
that way.
I think towards the victim there is absolutely no justice mechanism in play right now. India as such is a India's criminal justice system is just accused centric. मतलब they barely care about reformation or anything like that. उनको बस ये है कि अपना FIR कर दी, कागजी कार्रवाई पूरी कर दी, ट्रायल हो गया, एविडेंस हो गया, सेंटेंसिंग हो गई, भाड़ में जाओ, उसके बाद परेशान मत करो. इंडियन जुडिशियल सिस्टम इज वर्किंग इन अ टैंक के टायर
It's a
होते हैं ना,
mechanical.
बस
Let's
बड़े
put it decently mechanical. ठीक है, मतलब एक सेट हो गया है कि A for apple है, B for ball है, तो बस यही है.
हाँ, सब्जेक्टिव कंसिडरेशन तो
नहीं
है ही नहीं, मतलब है ही नहीं. Are we ready to sacrifice India for the next 1000 years जब तक हमारे पास पहनने के लिए प्रॉपर कपड़े, खाने के लिए प्रॉपर रोटी और हर एक के लिए घर नहीं होगा, to let such animalistic acts of rape keep happening in every household, in every corner, in every slum area, in every mansion? Like, how many women are we ready to sacrifice before attacking the problem at large? Because the facets are so many, but all of it leads to rape. For example, having single gender schools and not co-ed schools reduces exposure to a certain level that a boy will have to a girl or a girl will have to a boy, and therefore his lack of awareness later on in life कि मेरे होने से लड़की को भी ये हो सकता है. Or the fact that moms certainly don't want to talk about their moms don't want to talk about fathers having sex without consent. Because again, like, kya sochenge and all that. The stigma is just so large. Do we see any fundamental thing that we can attack India on to deal with this problem?
Fundamentally, as I started on my point, that each individual has to take responsibility of things, first of all. And that starts from the home. Since the society is improving, so have to be mom and dad. They have to start early with the sex education, good touch, bad touch. These fundamental things had to be taken care of. Secondly, we should be open about anything, any weird thing that comes in the mind of a child. We'll have to be receptive. We'll have to be, honest with ourselves that yes, we are living in a society where our child is exposed to such a thing. It is better to answer that and set a parameter for him
Than
to leave it for him to decide. फिर नहीं तो he has friends and web तो है ही फिर.
hey.
I think everything starts from oneself. We have to take responsibility of ourselves.
I think that's something fairly that we can go with. Do you mind if you guys take like a 2-minute, 3-minute break? Like, I want to go to the washroom real bad.
Definitely. Cut.
Yeah. Let's cut it for 2 minutes. So I think that points towards a very relevant question, that how do we reform a rapist, like, or the people who have the tendency to rape? I mean all of us at large. And while conditioning in some way, making people aware of the innate objectification they have towards the other gender, and sensitization is something that will be a long drawn process, क्योंकि उसमें education भी आएगा, societal values भी आएंगी, and a lot of things out of culture will be like trashed real bad. Like, from the point that we were living in war times where rape and plunder was an after war theory कि आप अगर कोई territory में ले लोगे तो your prerogative is that you get to rape all the women there in the city, to a point where rape and plunder is not the norm, thankfully.
Right.
And towards a tomorrow where rape is something that doesn't happen. I mean, the most heinous crime that there might just be murder, कि मार दिया, like physical harm कर दिया, but mental trauma नहीं inflict किया उस बंदे के ऊपर, तो at least the justice that we are following today is again classified into what is institutional justice, that will be the law, and what is extra institutional justice, which will be the society at large. कि रेप किया, पकड़ा गया, पत्थर मार दिया, जान ले ली
मार
गई.
दिया.
खत्म.
That is the two forms. I don't see either of the two working out.
Right.
And neither in synergy with each other, neither individually. There has to be a new approach, and the new approach has to be very drastic in the way कि अगर मान लो किसी को कन्विक्ट कर दिया है रेप के लिए, तो उस बंदे को तुमने एक sympathetic view say in order to understand the problem, because let's be fairly clear about the principles of criminal justice, and reforming the convict is always on the fact that you have to look at the accused and accused only, irrespective of whatever the victim might be going through, in order to reduce the number of accused. Like you can't just look at the road and say कि अच्छा ये इसका rape होगा, उसका rape होगा. But surely when you look at a person, their behavior, their psychology, you can point out कि okay, this person has a great deal of objectification embedded in his head, तो इसका chance है. In comparison to somebody who's very sensible about the things that he's exposed to, like you said that you're very sensitive about the fact that what comes up on your Instagram feed. So there is a degree of likelihood that your level of acting upon your tendency in comparison to somebody who's busy staring at pictures of boobs and vaginas throughout the day is comparatively lesser. So, and we can't monitor the content out there. Like
Right.
content production is something that is the prerogative of the producer itself.
Right.
So as long as porn thrives, as long as Old Balaji is there, as long as Badshah rap songs are there, as long as
Mind you, Badsha has some really good raps besides the objectifying women. His initial year raps are really good. I like those couple of them.
which ones?
The Banduk.
Acha. So violence.
Not really, but it's like more of expression of attitude of a person. I'm not very good at Punjabi, but that's what I drew from it.
Well, I don't have much information about Banduk, so
Anyway, coming back to the topic. So the one thing is for sure, as you rightly pointed out, that external elements cannot be controlled.
but at the same point of time, the wrong elements that we see in the wrong patterns that we see in today's life need to be very strongly voiced. Like we have reached a point of so much stimulation of information around us,
Right.
that we sometimes become ignorant or fail to act. Like for example, we stand against the fact कि rape होना चाहिए, rape नहीं होना चाहिए, sorry.
हाँ,
We stand against the fact that it is something that fucks things out of proportion for everybody. Not just the victim, not just his family members, but even we get to know कि कल तुम्हारा rape हुआ है तो हमारी फट जाएगी, ये कैसे हो गया. A friend, a family relative, we don't know how to act in the first place. पूछें या ना पूछें, बात करें या ना बात करें, sympathy दें या sympathy ना दें, because we are scared कि भाई इस फटके ही हाथ में आ जाएगी.
I think.
But when we see Sajid Khan coming on Big Boss, somebody who's accused of rape by several people, like several women have accused कि Sajid Khan ने rape किया है. We are celebrating the fact, we are definitely consuming it, and a meme comes tomorrow, we are retweeting that. We are not voicing it out.
And there are people voicing it out, but the point is consumerism. Big Boss is purely consumerism. What the shows work on a very toxic home culture of a home. Okay, people are fighting for no freaking reason. We all can agree. Even a simple child will not fight for those reasons. But they are creating that environment. Let's not blame the maker of the show, because for 15 seasons, we are well aware that what Big Boss is and what is it stands for. So obviously he is bound to go for something mirch masala types. वो अपनी जगह ठीक है. But if we stop tomorrow watching Big Boss all together, will he be making the show? I may be talking very loud, but my mom herself is a very big fan of Big Boss. Like TV खराब हो गया था and she was like Big Boss शुरू होने वाला है, TV ठीक कराओ.
So But she doesn't understand the impact that watching something like Big Boss and Sajid Khan being glorified is somehow going to expose other
For her,
people.
it's an
maid,
entertainment. For her, it's a simpliciter entertainment. I'm tried telling her, explaining her, but she is just there for her simple explanation is it's entertaining. She likes to see how people survive in such a toxic environment, and she learns a little bit of things about how human tendencies and things.
things.
Okay, I've tried telling her, but the thing is still same.
It's the same.
Okay.
Well, you pointed out quite a lot of subjective things over there, and it does help me understand that why we as human beings are different from animals in the first place. Lions का tigers का मैं कल example देख रहा था, and what is with tigers that they live in let's say they live in this space. It's divided into 4 parts, and the tigress will be like in each of the 4 quadrants in the corners. And whenever the tigress has cubs, like she has kids, वो क्या करती है, वो protection mode में आ जाती है, because the lion will be coming, the tiger will be coming into the territory to have sex with the tigress.
He'll get the cubs first.
He'll kill the cubs first and have sex with the tigress. As human beings, I don't know whether we can apply the same example. Like, if somebody kills your child and wants to come near you to fuck you, you can imagine what is going to happen. Like, becoming into a more dastardly crime series on Netflix.
So the civilized society tag can be easily taken off.
Yeah.
First place. If things come down to that thing. But I think as a civilized society, I think we have to keep ourselves in check, because no matter how stringent you make the law, we have the examples right in front of our eyes. ऐसा नहीं है कि निर्भया कांड से पहले डेथ सेंटेंस नहीं था रेप के लिए, था.
लोगों ने सोचा था कि वो क्रिमिनल अमेंडमेंट जो आएगी उसके बाद रेप केस विल गो डाउन, बट
आई से कि 20 years कर दो आप करके, ठीक है, बट इज इट गोइंग टू हेल्प? द करंट ट्रेंड सजेस्ट ऑपोजिट. सी deterrence एक होती है, इनफैक्ट stricter the law, some people find it pleasurable to break the law. So my point is कि हम offense completely remove नहीं कर सकते society में से. That is one thing we must understand. भगवान राम के टाइम पे भी उनका हुआ था, ठीक है, वो तो सतयुग वगैरह कहते हैं, जिस टाइम ऑफेंस मतलब सिविलाइज सोसाइटी और उस टाइम भी थी. यू गेटिंग माय पॉइंट बेसिकली. सो क्राइम विल रिमेन पार्ट ऑफ द सोसाइटी. It is only we as a subject when we take responsibility.
उस एनालॉजी से जाएं तो बढ़ने ही वाला है, क्योंकि कलयुग से घोर कलयुग का
नहीं, इसके बाद तो खत्म है ना फिर. हाँ. फिर तो स्टार्ट होगा दोबारा से.
पर अभी घोर कलयुग आना है. आई थिंक अभी कुछ
कलयुग चल रहा है. You think there is something missing out?
ये कलयुग का स्टार्टिंग पार्ट है. दिस इज द गोल्डन पीरियड ऑफ कलयुग इटसेल्फ.
I think I have seen enough. मेरे लिए एक घोर कलयुग ही चल रहा है.
फिर घोर कलयुग आएगा where all food and all water on earth will be becoming very very scarce. फिर हम इंसान खाना शुरू कर देंगे. And like that's what the story of yug states. And once that happens, एक दो आदमी बचेंगे, वो भी मर जाएंगे, and then like all life will vanish, and then regeneration. Another story, another Harappan civilization or things like that.
I think my take on this as a therapist is two-headed. Like, the first thing is, if you want to make mass change, then it has to be through education, because a therapist to her corner of the
right
locality mein nahi ho
examples.
sakte.
As the Joker greatly said, a society needs theatricality and
Yeah, true. But putting that aside, I think we do need education, because that is the fastest way of working with the child's evolving psyche.
Definitely.
और एक बहुत बढ़िया मॉडल क्रिएट करा गया था, which was basically for bullying, but it was कि most people who become perpetrators do not understand what they have done. तो empathy.
have you had people who like admitted or even told you like they have raped or they have been raped or something?
The other side, yes, definitely, that have been raped or have been in some way assaulted, but not that side. Or maybe I still haven't met someone, or they haven't told me. But I think सबसे easy thing is to help people understand कि, and ये बच्चों के साथ उन्होंने करा था, is to basically ask one child to become the the person who bullies the other, one person to become the victim. You don't use any words, you only do action, right? And then you reverse the roles. Then you get these two children to talk about it. कैसा लगा था when you were the perpetrator, and how did it feel like when you were the victim? You don't need language for this. It's completely physiological. Everyone feels fear, and everyone understands what it is like to be scared for your life. That is mass change. That is the only way we can do it, when we start introducing things like this at a local level, at ground root level. तभी हो सकता है.
Or a vigilante striking fear in the heart of...
I really wish. But the other side, definitely, as Deepal was also saying, is personal constitution. जब हम awareness, एक तो हमारा पूरा education system is based on the idea that जो बोला गया बस करते जाओ, you know. And this is also where bullying, ragging, all sorts of sexual abuse that happens in schools is also, you know, hidden away.
Definitely, right.
आपने कभी बच्चे को empower ही नहीं किया कि वो कुछ आगे बोले. उसका हमेशा से the entire education system is चुप रहो, जो बोला है करते जाओ. So our education system has to then change in such a way where we can build the individual's capacity to question things. That is why personal constitution, like he's talking about, builds. कि आप अपनी ही motives को question कर सकते हो. You are aware of yourself. You build sentience, evolve sentience.
The agency to critique your thought processes,
yeah, exactly.
and come up with more detailing of what impact what has. And like, yes, not cheering Sajid Khan on Big Boss, like definitely telling mom and dad or anybody watching Big Boss,
Stop.
ki stop it, like it's
I've given
necessary.
I've simply given up.
Yeah. Yashvardhan, what's been the evolution of law of rape except for like Nirbhaya and criminal amendment? Have we seen like a striking shift at any point of time since independence to 2022?
हुआ है, ऐसे नहीं. जैसे आप एक केस था जिसके बाद एक्चुअली द पर्सन जो अथॉरिटी की पोजीशन में रहता है उसको अंडरस्टैंड किया कि उसमें कंसेंट हो सकता है फियर से हो. पहले क्या होता था, सिर्फ ये देखा जाता था कंसेंट है या नहीं है. तो उस केस में मेरे को एग्जैक्टली केस का नाम मैंने लिखा भी है, मगर मैं देख के बता सकता हूँ.
बताओ यार.
कहाँ गया, आज सुबह पढ़ा है.
Absolutely, all the law coming from you. Then I have another question for Deepal and Nilanjana.
हाँ, तो दो केस का 1972 का केस है ये, तुकाराम वर्सेस स्टेट ऑफ महाराष्ट्र. इसमें कस्टोडियल रेप था. कस्टोडियल रेप था. जब सेशन कोर्ट के सामने गए तो सेशन कोर्ट ने एक्वेट करा ये कह के कि झट्टू फिंगर टेस्ट होता था तब. तो उस हिसाब से उन्होंने बोला कि नहीं, शी वॉज हैबिचुअल ऑफ रेप. इंटरकोर्स हुआ है, उन्होंने माना है, मगर इंटरकोर्स और रेप डिफरेंट है. तो उन्होंने उस बेसिस पे एक्वेट किया. जब हाई कोर्ट में गए, हाई कोर्ट ने ये डिसाइड किया कि नहीं, जो पुलिस वाले जो दो लोग थे वो दे वर पर्सन्स इन अथॉरिटी. तो जो कंसेंट था वो फेयरफुल था. वो उसने अपने खुद के मन से नहीं बोला कि हाँ मैं पार्टिसिपेट करना चाह रही हूँ. बट सुप्रीम कोर्ट में जब आया, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने फिर से मतलब चेंज किया और उसको एक्वेट किया ये कहते हुए कि बॉडीली इंजरी नहीं थी. उसके बाद जो अमेंडमेंट आया था पहला, उसके बाद ये जो आईपीसी में आया था और जो एविडेंस एक्ट में आया था कि सिर्फ स्टेटमेंट जो वो दे रही है कि कंसेंट उसका नहीं था उतना काफ़ी है. उसके बाद बर्डन ऑफ प्रूफ जाता है अक्यूज पे. तो अब चीज़ें बदल रही है. निर्भया के बाद भी थोड़े और बेटर हुआ है लॉ, मगर अभी भी कुछ ऐसे लूप होल्स हैं जिसका फ़ायदा. अच्छा, दूसरी चीज़ है, पहले बात अलग थी, आजकल गूगल और ये सब इतना आसान हो गया कि घर बैठा बच्चा भी कोई क्राइम करने से पहले देख सकता है कि मेरे साथ क्या क्या हो सकता है, मुझे कैसे बचना है. तो आजकल अक्यूज भी जो आ रहा है उसको पहले मालूम रहता है. क्राइम पेट्रोल. हाँ, क्राइम पेट्रोल है. तो अक्यूज भी पढ़ा लिखा है.
पढ़ा लिखा है. यूएस का एक मैं केस कल पढ़ रहा था इसके लिए. तो देयर वाज अ गाय एंड द एफबीआई एंड द सीक्रेट सर्विस वर इन्वॉल्व्ड ओवर देयर एंड they were doubting him for counterfeiting money, like dollars over there. So what was happening was that he was crossing states by the day and exchanging his counterfeit bills. $20 देता था, $18 वापस ले लेता था. And secret service लगी हुई थी इस काम में. Surprisingly, they had a profiler and everybody on that case because it became a case for the state of US rather than any independent police force. And they caught him somehow because they were already seeing the pattern कि ये कहाँ जा रहा है. and accordingly mapping कि अच्छा भी यहाँ पे होगा. So for one full day they had in a shopping complex over there, they had the police and police deployed in every shopping complex, and they caught him. And it was just by a pure stroke of luck because उसको 2-3 साल से follow करे जा रहे थे but मिल ही नहीं रहा था. When they caught him, they went through his belongings, his texts and all those things at that point of time, whatever he had जो उसका लिखा हुआ था. And what was revealed was that the crime that they were looking at was counterfeiting for money, but this guy was somebody who was raping women left, right and center where he was going. And he was so educated, like you said कि कोई भी पढ़ लिख लेता है, तो he was so educated that he was doing another crime to mask on top of that, and he had possibly read each and every criminal jurisprudence, right from the philosophers of Greece to magazines at that point of time, to learn कि मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ क्या नहीं कर रहा हूँ, to carefully keep doing all of that and still keeping himself safe. The only fact that he got caught at that point of time for violating women and raping women was because कि उसका एक शर्ट का धागा यहाँ से फटा हुआ था, एंड बस वो एक ही शर्ट थी. हाँ, तो वहाँ से वो धागा फटा हुआ था. तो one of the profilers was just going through that evidence and they just wanted to see that a man who's earning quite a bit at that point of time through all of this, has absolutely all the freedom in the world, is wearing a torn t-shirt. तो उससे वहाँ पे उन्होंने करा that अच्छा ये तो फटा हुआ है, this looks like somebody has pierced through it, then it's a sign of violence, and it masked probably it unmasked a sex scandal which went on for hundreds of women out there.
लॉ तो देखो चेंज होंगे, आगे कोई और केस आएगा फिर लॉ बदल जाएंगे, मगर इशू तब अपन एड्रेस कर पाएंगे जब रिपोर्ट होंगे. केसेस जब रिपोर्ट होंगे ही नहीं तो लॉ कैसे कुछ कर पाएगा.
बट रिपोर्ट करने के लिए भी फिर अब एक वो बनाना पड़ेगा, एक सिस्टम बनाना पड़ेगा कि जो लोग रिपोर्ट कर रहे हैं दे ऑल्सो फील सेफ, दे फील एम्पावर्ड बाय रिपोर्टिंग रादर देन फीलिंग दैट सोसाइटी का स्टिग्मा ही मार देगा या मम्मी पापा क्या कहेंगे. आई मीन
हाँ ये भी है.
दैट्स व्हाट वी हैव हैड केसेस वेयर इफ यू लेट्स से somehow manage to tell the closest person in a room कि भाई मेरा रेप हुआ है और मैं
10 मिनट बाद वो समझा रहे हैं मत बताना किसी.
हाँ, वो समझा रहे, या बात अगर खराब हो गई रिलेशन की तो वही आदमी कल को धमकी दे रहा होता है कि तूने अगर नहीं बताया तेरे माँ बाप को बताऊंगा तेरा रेप हुआ था, बिकॉज दे आर नॉट लाइक दे आर नॉट पनिशिंग द स्टिग्मा.
जैसे मैं आपको बताता हूँ, सोसाइटी को एक्सेप्ट करना पड़ेगा कि हमें सबको मिलके उसके, जैसे अब फॉर एग्जांपल स्लॉटर है, काउ स्लॉटर है, अब पूरे राजस्थान में कोहराम मचा रखा है यार, जो गाय लेके घूम रहा है उसको भी पकड़ के जेल में डाल रहे हो आप. आप एक देखो, मैं वो भी इक्विवेलेंट इंपॉर्टेंट हो सकता है, मगर आप उसके लिए अगर सब पूरी सोसाइटी इतनी जागरूक है कि सड़क पे कोई दिख रहा है गाय घुमाते हुए और वो बाई चांस मुसलमान हुआ तो सब लोग धर लेंगे उसे और स्लॉटरिंग का वो लगा के जेल में, तो ये रेप के साथ क्यों नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. आप देखो ना, आप देखते हो कि कोई लड़की बेचारी जा रही है, उसके पीछे कोई लड़का घूम रहा है, आप गाड़ी में जा रहे हो सकता है आप देखो रुको कुछ होगा, या आप उनसे पूछो कि आप सेफ फील कर रहे हो, मगर नहीं होता है, आप चले जाते हो आगे. तो पूरी सोसाइटी जब एट लार्ज पूरे उस चीज़ को समझेगी कि रिपोर्टिंग क्यों नहीं हो रही है, तब उसका कोई वो निकलेगा कि लॉ तभी मदद करेगा जब आप जाओगे वहाँ.
बट डोंट यू थिंक the oversensitivity might also raise a lot of false alarms, like for example
false alarms अभी भी है.
हाँ, but what happens is, let's say we give, I mean right till now I've been like advocating the fact कि अगर आपने किसी को देखा कि उसका रेप हुआ है तो they should just out it and they should just raise their volume so hard that the world falls deaf and blind, but they still can't ignore you. Like it might be that scenario, but at the same point of time, if you're giving that power to a woman कि अब अगर रेप हुआ है तो बस इतना बड़ा चिल्लाना लग गई है. At the first instance, any guy who's, let's say, not very well versed, doesn't know how to approach a woman or what is a friendly touch or what is comfortable or not comfortable, stands in the danger, because now, let's say Nilanjana, you're sitting over and I'm like, hey Nilanjana, how are you? And we shake hands and like, I shake like 2 seconds, a bit, 2 Mississippis longer. You're like, you did some horrible shit. And like, I know कि the moment you go on your Instagram, I am ostracized for life from society.
नहीं, मगर फॉल्स केसेस के लिए फिर या तो आप ऐसा करो कंपनसेशन स्कीम्स रखो, वो भी तो नहीं हमारे यहाँ पे। आप
We
किसी
have
को
law compensation.
नहीं है, बॉक्सों में है जैसे।
Forget compensation. But we have provisions where a false case, a case can be instituted against the person making a false claim and instituting a false case.
Malicious.
But how many pursue it? Reasons being after not thousand, but sorry, several decades of litigation, person is too tired to pursue it.
हाँ कि अब उसके लिए भी 10 साल और।
The beauty of the beauty, you can say that if a case is being registered, the complainant does not has to come to the court. The state takes care of it. ठीक है? While the accused has.
Do you think that should change with the criminal jurisprudence? Now complainants council also.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it. That's fine. I'll say that the court should initiate, just in case if they find that the case was false, they should themselves initiate the proceedings.
हाँ मतलब वो जिस दिन मालूम पड़ गया उस दिन या कोई फाइन का प्रोसीजर हो तो आदमी को लगे कि भाई ठीक है मैं किसी पे
deterrent for the complainant as
लगा
well.
सकता।
एक escrow बनाना पड़ेगा for justice system.
No, there is already.
हाँ.
There is already.
They call criminal lawyers.
No. Several. High Court, Bar Association Council account, Delhi High Court Legal Services account.
As a lawyer, it's so disheartening to like see fellow lawyers also so disgusted with the system, and like nobody being able to do anything despite all of us having like the most erudite luminaries sitting at the helm of the Supreme Court, like
Alleged.
like we have one of the most looked Justice Chandrachud is going to be the most looked forward to guy in terms of a Chief Justice of India that we're going to have after a very long time. मतलब हम सोच रहे हैं कि राम राज्य वापस आने वाला है हिंदुस्तान में, because
definitely माहौल तो वैसा ही है.
हाँ, like I myself thinking कि पार्टी करनी चाहिए, but when I look at the system it's like मैं लॉ प्रैक्टिस क्यों कर रहा हूँ यार कोर्ट में, क्या होने वाला है.
मैं आपको एक बात बताता हूँ, मैं रेप नहीं, एक केस था 307 का, मैं चार्ज पे बहस करने गया 30,000 में, थोड़ा लेट हो गया, मतलब पार्किंग का इशू रहता है. मैं गया तो उसने ऐसे चार्ज का पूरा ऑर्डर लिखा के रखा हुआ था जज साहब ने, बोलते हैं साइन कर दो. तो मैंने बोला मैंने सबमिशंस नहीं किए. तो वो बोलते नहीं करना है आपको, आगे आप कर सकते हो, मगर ऑर्डर तैयार है. तो मैंने बोला अगर चार्ज की बहस होती तो प्रोसिक्यूटर हैज़ टू स्टार्ट, वो बताए ना कि क्या एविडेंस है मेरे खिलाफ, मैं क्यों रख रहे हो आप मुझे. तो बोलते हैं सर यहाँ पे ऐसी प्रैक्टिस है, अगर आपको आर्ग्यू करना ऑर्डर तो पास हो चुका है. ठीक है, मैंने आर्ग्यू किया मगर ऑर्डर ऑलरेडी था वहाँ पे. मतलब तो ये चीज़ें जब बदलना पड़ेगा ना.
Just for the heck of it.
And things are still better in Delhi.
Much better in Delhi.
आगरा में क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन चल रहा है, जज साहब है ही नहीं, रीडर लिख रहा है, अब बोलता है डिफर कर देते क्यों, मैं थक गया हूँ. मतलब
that's what the state of affairs is.
I think again, as a person, as a legal practitioner, I can only take responsibility of myself. I'll take care, I'll do my work honestly. It's up to the fate. हमारे यहाँ पे एक saying कहावत है कि जब एक जजमेंट पास होती है ना तो 3 चीज़ें काम करती हैं, जज की कलम, तुम्हारी बहस, और तीसरी क्लाइंट की किस्मत.
सही है.
ठीक है, तो ये वाली बात है.
ये किस्मत वाला एंगल तो मैं समझ सकता हूँ कि इन अ यूनिवर्स सो वास्ट एज द इंडियन जुडिशियल सिस्टम, किस्मत डेफिनेटली कोई लिखवा के आया होता है जब उसको एक स्पीडी रिलीफ मिल जाता है.
देयर आर इंस्टेंसेस कि बंदे की 6 डेट्स निकल गई हैं एंड 6 डेट्स पे जज छुट्टी पे.
हाँ, कुछ हो ही नहीं सकता. और
एक ऐसे भी केसेस होते हैं जहाँ पे बहुत ही गंदा केस है बट जज, और गंदे से जज ने रिलीफ भी दे दिया,
और रिलीफ दे दिया इमीडिएटली.
तो डेफिनेटली आई कैन नॉट इग्नोर दैट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ किस्मत. Definitely
it's a pure gamble now.
Right.
You can play your odds, but you can never expect कि ये ऐसा होगा ही होगा.
Doctrine of precedence क्या होता है?
हाँ.
It is there to bring a certainty in a law. Sorry. But the thing is कि despite rigid laws, उनकी interpretation और applicability बहुत ही different cases में हो रही है और different तरीके से हो रही है.
Precedence पे I made a statement at a seminar अभी recently where I was asked कि क्या है Indian judicial system, और from the vastness of quasi-judicial forums such as Competition Commission or something to the Supreme Court of India, where do you see the fundamentals? And I was like, all of these are just churning papers and papers every day. One fine day, the Supreme Court will be like, आज से दही में बूंदी नहीं अब खीरा डलेगा, तो all the judges will be like, खीरा. But that's pretty much what's happening, because effectively justice is a faded concept in our minds. you can either spend 5 crore rupees and book the seniors and get an immediate stay, or you can't really expect anything out of a system. And that's what I think the plight is with rape victims, etc. But you as individual people, one question for you was the two scenarios. Starting with you, I'm gonna of course ask the rest of them to the same question. A friend comes to you and she hasn't been talking to anybody, and you know her state of mind is like that, and she ends up telling you that she was violated, she was raped, and you know the guy, and you are not friends with the guy or something, but you know, like something like that. What is your next plan of action? I'm talking like real, like no, like camera ke liye, let's not play safe.
Definitely, I get your point. I've seen your other podcasts. There is no point अगर मैं यहाँ पे कुछ makeup करके बात करूँ. Let's be real about things.
Yeah.
So being a lawyer, first of all, I'll definitely, but knowing that false cases are also there, I'll have to be certain. I'll try to question her certain things, try to find out whether her story is making sense to me or not. If it is making sense, then definitely I'll personally go with her to get the case registered against person. There's no need for me to go to the guy if I find there's a veracity in the story. But if there is a definite, if I something fishy in the story of the thing, then I think I should go to the guy as well and hear to his side as well, and then come to a conclusion whether we should go with the case or not. I think that should be the right approach for me.
And surely that's a very safe line also, I'd say that, because when it happens, I have seen the most bizarre of things happening. Like somebody will just go quiet कि मेरे को पता ही नहीं अब क्या जवाब देना, बहन तू बता दे यार ये क्या हो रहा है.
बोलेंगे कि मैं दोनों को जानता हूँ, मैं दूर रहता हूँ.
That's what would you do if a guy comes to you and tells you that, you know what, like I had sex, it was fun, she was drunk, I think that there is some problem over there, but मेरे को बहुत मजा आया. What is your response?
If I know the girl, I'll definitely visit her knowing this thing. I'll try to know her account, what happened. Then depending on the whatever the...
Yeah, but we're assuming now that like the girl...
She's not known.
She didn't enjoy one bit. It was something that was inflicted on her, not something that she chose.
Definitely, I have a person who has an independent thought process. I'm not those kind of persons who are easily, you know, tend to gel up with people just for the company of it. So it is not at all difficult for me to befriend a person. I have befriended people for very less. Okay, but if I come to know, I have my moral standards. I cannot support that thing at all.
Clearly, I mean, the one person who's filtering his Instagram feed to keep himself in the right exposure, I was sort of expecting that he would say like, I have my lines and I know my morals. It's not something.
I cannot just allow things to, you know, normalize things that we are talking about. It is not normal.
So no emotional outburst.
Why should I be emotionally outburst? Nothing wrong has happened to me. But yes, as a responsible citizen, that is what I should be doing.
But a close friend or something getting affected by this.
Close friends, but I cannot just ignore. If I'm ignoring my best friend today, I'm ignoring my maybe son tomorrow. Yeah. Because being a close friend, I cannot allow that.
I think that is probably which pushes us in stress, and then we act on our impulses more than our sensibilities.
Somebody will have to take a stand.
But nobody can say that at this point of time, restricting yourself to filing a complaint at the police station is the sensible thing to do if your child or daughter is getting raped. Like the most sensible thing I feel will be picking up a gun and like सीधा आंखों के बीच में 2 गोली मार के खत्म करना, if you know the facts of the story are right.
Right.
Like if you know that is the absolute truth, you are fully satisfied with it. I think the only forward way you look at it is कि या तो गोली मार दो या उस रेपिस्ट को वहाँ से उठा के जीवन में इतना प्यार दो, इतनी पढ़ाई कराओ, इतना उसको एक्सपोज कराओ कि he ends up
feeling guilty for it.
He ends up really changing his stance on life and is remorseful for the rest of his life for the wrongs that he has inflicted. And I'm sure like as human beings, we are not really people incapable of a change in such a short amount of time. In fact, if you look at the Vietnam War with US, what was witnessed was that I forgot the name of the guy who was piloting the aircraft which dropped the nuclear bomb on no, not the nuclear bomb. I'm talking about Pearl Harbor. Sorry.
Right.
So at the time of Pearl Harbor, the guy who was dropping bombs from the plane, he was considered a hero. Everything at that point in time, the war ended, and after that, the guy was very remorseful about the amount of casualties he has caused in that short time. And jump to 40 years later, that guy was living in Vietnam at Pearl Harbor, and he was living with the people who were survivors of that war. And वो उनके साथ काफी पहली बन गया था. He was in fact writing condolences for the grandchildren of the survivors of the war when they died a natural death 40 years later. Itna. So as we as human beings are capable of an agency to think and change our ways and mend our ways, which I think make us human. Lana, you as a psychologist, would you take the passive step or the active step in order to make a change in a scenario where a guy comes to you and tells you that, hey, I had fun, and the girl is like, yeah, not fun for me?
I think I will not shy away from the fact that I am aware of my violent capacities. So if I know that this is the truth, I will not shy away from beating the living crap of the man or the woman, for that matter. I don't care what it doesn't. Gender doesn't matter to me. If it happens and it's the truth, then the person needs to know what it feels like to be on the receiving end. And I'm not saying you should feel the same pain, but you should know. And I would not shy away from also saying that, bro, I'm reporting you. This is not, we don't accept this nonsense. I absolutely have very high standards for the kind of people who I mingle with, and this is the shit that's happening around. No, not happening. So active, passive, both.
So somebody who is a prospective client of yours, let's say, wants to cure himself and ends up confiding in you, ki, you know what, like, I might have raped someone. Should they be worried about the fact that you're going to beat the shit out of them?
No, I think it completely changes when it's a client, because again, and this is it's a controversial opinion, but if a therapist cannot work with an accused or a convicted felon of whatever kind, then they're not a therapist. Because you have to put aside your bias to be able to work with an individual who wants to transform themselves. Chahe kisi bhi tarah se. Chahe even if they come to say ki, I just want to know if I did it. But I will tell them that, listen, if we do recognize that this is true, we will have to involve a lawyer or some kind of legal aid. Because again, if I say मैं तुम्हें पुलिस में report कर दूँगी तो बात ही आगे नहीं बढ़ेगी. So I also have to do it in such a way where I allow the individual to want to talk about it. So as a clinician, I will have to say, please, like, the stage is yours. But I will make it very clear at the beginning that if I do think or if we do realize that this is the truth, we will have to bring in.
I think your mental faculties allow you to like function properly in both the ends, but knowing something like that is more like having a gun in your jacket pocket and aimed at it. You don't know if you're going to shoot or not, but you surely know that there's a tendency in you it's going to like want to kill, murder and do everything.
I mean, we all have it, right? I mean, think of it. It may not be a friend, but think of your own daughter. If something like that happened, you know, even if it's not your gun, you will borrow a gun from someone and like beat the crap out of this person and kill them.
दिमाग में वही आएगी,
खत्म कर दोगे आप यार.
इंसाफ दिया जाए.
Evil में तो evil एक बहुत ही random term है, but the capacity to destroy तो हम सब में ही है. हम सब destruction कर सकते हैं. चाहे वो आदमी हो औरत हो, उससे कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता. हम सब में वो capacity है, वो physical strength और वो will है कि हम destroy कर सकते हैं इंसान को. तो वो तो एक नॉर्मल थेरेपिस्ट भी कर सकता है. उसने बोला कि मैंने एक बार अपने मम्मी को थप्पड़ मारा था. इट ट्रिगर्ड द थेरेपिस्ट एंड दे लाइक, ब्रो, आई जस्ट आई नेवर वांट टू सी योर फेस अगेन, एंड दे whack the shit out of their client. Can happen in any situation for that matter. But there's always a gun. Everybody has it. We're all carrying.
Therapists are just like way more handy with the gun and they know like not to fire.
Yeah, I suppose a little bit of restraint on when and when not to.
Similar thing applies to the advocates as well.
Lawyers, so I think look at it from a different lens only, na, because I've been there. So like
I've been in several debates. यार तुम rapist को क्यों represent करते हो? वो मेरा काम है.
हाँ, like he will looking at it as a business only. Like
लोग बोलते भी आपको अच्छा लगता है फिर, मतलब ये क्या बात है?
मेरे साथ भी यही हुआ था. स्टार्टिंग में हल्का सा लगता है अच्छा ये क्या हो रहा है, अच्छा करप्शन हो रहा है, देश खराब हो रहा है. फिर उसके बाद द ग्रेविटी ऑफ द क्राइम दैट कम्स टू द ऑफिस विद द क्लाइंट इज अगेन लाइक यू लुक एट इट फ्रॉम द पेरिस्कोप ऑफ ब्रिंगिंग मनी एंड लाइक अच्छा रेप के चला जा कोई नहीं 10-15 लाख रुपए ले आ, बिकॉज आई थिंक in some way we try to justify it with the principles of justice, saying that every person should get the adequate representation before the court of law. But at the same point of time, I have seen lawyers knowing fully well कि ये आदमी बिल्कुल गंद है, इस आदमी को या तो मार दो या इस आदमी को कहीं भेज दो.
बिल्कुल पॉसिबल है.
They will just end up quoting a higher fee जो उनको लगेगा कि ये तो देगा ही नहीं. But at the end of the day, it's not like we draw the line कि we're not going to represent. It's more like we're going to quote something so higher that we stop caring about what it's doing to us.
See, in the case of gangsters, we have been told to deal with these guys very carefully because आपके स्टार्टिंग में तो they'll be very sweet, सर आप ही सब हैं, आप ही सब हैं, आप ही सब हैं. आप एक बेल रिजेक्ट करवा लो उनकी, आपके घर पे ना खड़े हो. You know. So you have to be very careful about these things. It's a again a question first of moral compass, second the security of the family. You have to keep a lot of things into your mind while dealing with the client. You cannot simply say कि भाई तू रेपिस्ट है तो तू जा भाई, आधे से आधा पे एलिगेशन लगी है, इसका मतलब थोड़ी ना सारे रेपिस्ट हैं, कुछ आपका एक्सपीरियंस भी होता है. The thing is कि one of my seniors told me one of the instance कि one guy came to him, he was representing him. जिस दिन उसकी बेल हुई ना, he came to his office with the fees and all and he told him कि हाँ बड़ा मज़ा आ गया, मैं बच गया, आपने मेरे को बचा लिया, नहीं तो सारे सबूत मेरे खिलाफ थे, मैं तो पकड़ा ही गया था. तो कह रहे थे तुम खुश, वो वाली क्या बात है. कह रहे सर जब करके बच जाए तो आदमी खुश नहीं होगा तो और क्या होगा इतने सीरियस ऑफेंस से. So when he's jolly about it, there are two things. Person can do it accidentally and be remorseful about it. ठीक है सर आपने बचा लिया, मैं बच गया, I'm thankful to you. And second, the person is happy about doing certain thing, not even remorseful, and he's enjoyed that he made a fool out of law. These are two different aspects. So you as a lawyer, then I have to make a decision. My role as a moral compass then comes into play. Otherwise, it is my duty.
Yeah.
एक मेरी पंडित जी से लड़ाई हुई इस बात पे, लड़ाई नहीं मतलब ही स्टार्टेड क्वेश्चनिंग मी कि आप क्रिमिनल प्रैक्टिस क्यों करते हो. मैंने कहा क्यों, खराब क्या है, क्या आपको इतने गंदे गंदे लोगों से डील करना पड़ता है, रेपिस्ट, मर्डरर, ये वो, डकैत, ये वो. मैंने कहा आप पूजा करवाते हो, आपके यहाँ पे जो पूजा करने आते हैं वो सारे क्या शरीफ आदमी हैं, या उनके चेहरे पे कुछ लिखा होता है कि मैं ठीक हूँ आप मेरी आरती करवाइए, उसकी मत करवाइए. आप बड़े बड़े मंदिरों में चले आओ, बड़े बड़े लोग पैसे दे के आरती करवाते हैं और गरीब आदमी पीछे खड़ा रहता है, उसको दर्शन, जिसकी इतनी ज़्यादा वो होती है वैल्यू, वो देख भी नहीं पाता बेचारा,
पहुंच नहीं पाता वहाँ पे.
तो ये क्या अच्छा कर रहे हो आप. नहीं बट स्टिल, बट दीज आर द क्वेश्चन. आप अपना कर्म पे ध्यान दो ना,
कर्म पे ध्यान दो.
why are you being judged? So that is the thing.
Nice. So Yashwardhan, finally to you, would you give into that compulsive need to beat the accused with a sledgehammer? और
देखो अगर फॉर एग्जाम्पल मेरा बेटा है, वो आके मुझे बोल रहा है कि पापा मैं कल पार्टी में गया था, मेरे से ये हो गया, पहले 3-4 झापड़ तो मारूंगा मैं, उसके बाद ही बात होगी. मगर मैं उसे ये पहले बताऊंगा कि भाई तूने किया क्या है, तुझे उसके पीछे की अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, जो तूने किया है वो सामने वाले के लिए कितना प्रॉब्लमेटिक हो सकता है, उसको कितने साल उस चीज़ का ट्रॉमा हो सकता है. हाँ ये मैं उससे समझाऊंगा. वह बेटा है, घर से निकाल नहीं सकता. हाँ अगर दोस्त होगा तो मैं उसको ज़रूर बोलूँगा भाई मैं तेरे साथ और नहीं घूम सकता, या तो मेरे घर मत आया कर, ये मैं करूँगा. हाँ मगर उसको समझाना ज़रूरी है पहले. अगर सिर्फ वो आए मैं कि भाई मैंने ये कर दिया चल निकल, उसको वो चीज़ समझ नहीं आएगी. और वो आपको अगर बोल रहा है तो मतलब वो आप पे इतना ट्रस्ट कर रहा है कि वो अपनी ऐसी चीज़ बता रहा है जिसके लिए वो जेल में हो सकता है. तो मेरे हिसाब से पहले मैं उसको बैठ के समझाऊंगा कि भाई ये जो आपने किया है लॉफुल नहीं है, और इसके कारण सिर्फ आप नहीं, आपने जिसके साथ किया है उसके साथ के और 10 लोग भी इफेक्ट होंगे. तो उसको समझाना भी बहुत ज़रूरी है. मेरा ये रहेगा इसमें स्टैंड.
इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट.
Well, that was fairly honest कि
हाँ मतलब मैं बेटे को
Doing
घर
the
से नहीं
line.
निकालूंगा। हाँ मगर ये जरूर है कि अगर वो जेल जाता है
Hmm.
तो मैं ये कोशिश नहीं करूंगा कि पैसे दिला के रोक लूँ, मगर उसको समझाना जरूरी है पहले कि भाई तूने बहुत गलत चीज़ की है। जब उसको समझ नहीं आएगा तो फिर करेगा, और हो सकता है अगली बार मुझे ना बताए
Hmm.
क्योंकि मैंने झापड़ तो मारी है।
Hmm. Well, I think all of us are confused in what happens when somebody close to us tells us about an incident of rape. And this conversation did shed a lot of light on various facets of what I did not think of myself. कि ये भी हो सकता है, वो भी हो सकता है, and rather than being able to find that one commonality between every rape case out there, I do accept that there is none. There's rapists within all of us. There's a tendency that is there within all of us. It just depends on our state of mind at any given point of time to act on that inhibition or that tendency and ruin somebody's life for the worse. Yeah, like, I mean, I can't really conclude it by saying let's hope you guys don't rape or anything because that'll be fucking idiotic. But at the same point of time, I think it'll be important for each and every person watching this podcast to realize the fact that your exposure is determining the way you're objectifying a certain thing, or you're looking at a certain woman in a certain from a certain angle, which might be corrupting the way you might act in terms of acceptable sexual behavior towards the other gender or even your gender. So limiting that perhaps by filtering out your Instagram feed, or at the same point of time putting yourself on a backseat to really take a stance on how you feel about it from multiple angles as a therapist, or the fact that really just accepting the fact that reality is what it is by saying कि बच्चे को शायद घर से बाहर ना निकालूं but ठुकेगा ज़रूर और समझेगा ज़रूर कि क्या हुआ है, is something that has to be pushed beyond the common realms of sensibilities and rather taken more radically. So the solutions might be exposing your children at a very tender age to the other gender and letting them learn from experience that what happens when you trouble a girl, or what happens when a girl is in pain. It's not a comforting sight.
Very true.
To the point of time that having more and more communication with people who are below the age of 25 to make them more aware, because I don't know whether we can build a sense of sensitivity within them, but we can surely with post-adolescence adults, we can definitely inculcate a sense of thought process where they question whatever they have learned.
Responsibility. Towards oneself and the other.
Yeah. Before we have to move towards a society where we have to set examples that if you rape someone, you will beat you with a sledgehammer becomes the only possible approach, because things have become so bad and objectification is not something that's being countered. With that, we'll call it adjourned for the day. Thank you so much, Deepal, for putting in the insight. Yashwardhan, definitely learned a lot from your experiential tidbits that you've picked up in your practice. And Nilanjana for throwing light again and again and again, the third time this time. Yep. With that, let's call it adjourned. Hope you guys have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.